The Mexican factory thrums with heavy machinery. A worker crawls beneath a hydraulic press for maintenance. Under time pressure, the lockout step is skipped. Suddenly, the press powers up, slamming down with unstoppable force. One missed procedure turns routine into tragedy. A stark reminder that vigilance saves lives. A male construction worker hammers away, repairing a house, focused on his task. Above, the old house frame looms, weakened and unstable. Without warning, it groans and collapses, crashing down with brutal force. The heavy beams crush the worker, silencing his efforts in an instant. No one reaches him in time, no miracle saves him. Dust settles over the wreckage. In one fleeting moment, a sturdy frame becomes a deadly trap. At a bustling construction site, a worker operates a concrete pump, guiding its long boom into position. Focused on the pour, he misses the danger above, a live high-voltage line. No one checked the boom's clearance. In an instant, it strikes the wire, sending sparks and panic across the site. One skipped hazard check turns routine into tragedy. Power line safety isn't optional, it's life or death. In a vast warehouse, a worker drives a forklift through a narrow aisle. Distracted, he collides with a rack, causing boxes to collapse. He quickly escapes before getting caught in a dangerous situation. This incident highlights a key lesson. Operating heavy machinery in tight spaces requires precision and constant vigilance to avoid serious errors. At night shift in a factory, a male worker in a blue shirt stands on a conveyor belt doing his work. The belt lurches forward with a sudden jolt, catching his leg in the joint between two belts. He stumbles, but the relentless machine pulls him in, crushing his leg with a sickening crunch. His cries echo as the belt grinds on, unyielding. In one careless moment, a routine task becomes a brutal trap. On a busy assembly line, a worker stepped inside the safety barrier to get a closer look at a component. But the robotic arm in that cell was still active, following its programmed path. It continued its motion, unaware of the person, and made contact with the worker. It's a powerful lesson in automation safety. A robot's work zone is a no-go area. Physical barriers and sensors are there for a reason, and the only safe way to enter is to perform a full lockout-tagout procedure first. A scaffolding built from thin metal frames and worn planks looms unsteady against the tight space. Then a small shift, a misplaced step. The scaffolding groans, metal creaks under the strain. In an instant, the platform tilts, planks sliding. The structure collapses with a violent crash, pressing the worker steadying the scaffold in the bottom. By sheer luck, he escapes serious injury. In the world of scaffolding and height, luck is not a safety plan. One slip can turn seconds into disaster. Safety isn't a formality. It's the only line between a close call and tragedy. A red crane strains, its cable taut, hoisting a massive concrete block. The block sways wildly, losing balance, and the crane groans under the shifting weight. With a sickening lurch, the crane tips, cables snapping like threads. The block plummets, slamming into the ground, kicking up a choking cloud of dust and debris. Workers in reflective vests scatter, shouting as the wreckage settles. Improper load control and unstable lifting can turn routine operations into deadly accidents. At midday, a crane lifts a heavy iron billboard frame as several unprotected workers step in to help guide it. In their rush, the frame brushes against overhead power lines. A violent surge of electricity erupts, sending the men convulsing before they collapse to the ground. In seconds, an unplanned act turns a routine task into a fatal accident. At a Turkish oil factory, a worker climbs a fuel tanker, cigarette lit, to open the lid for cleaning. Residual vapors ignite in a deafening explosion, flames roaring, hurling him through the air. Ignoring no smoking rules causes disaster. Strict hazard protocols, especially banning smoking in explosive areas, are essential. In a narrow street, an excavator digs a trench. The ground collapses, dirt erupting, swallowing the pit. The machine tilts, workers scatter in panic. Dust chokes the air. Unstable ground turns routine into chaos. Thorough soil testing and strict safety measures are essential to avoid catastrophe. At night on a construction site, a worker atop an unstable hoist is pulled into the void, hanging helplessly. His harness holds firm as the lifeline. Equipment failure turns routine into crisis. In 2025, 48% of hoist incidents stem from such failures. Thorough equipment checks and maintenance are vital safeguards against tragedy. A yellow forklift roars. 2 workers aboard, one asleep on a crate. It shakes. The crate collapses, dragging the worker down. The frame shatters, pinning him. Horseplay on machinery becomes a calamity, warning that load checks and banning riders on cargo are mandatory to avert disaster. Under a vast sky, workers climb a high-voltage power pole, handling uninsulated tools near live wires. Suddenly, electrocution strikes 4 in a deadly flash. Failing to de-energize lines causes a crisis. OSHA 2023 reports 78 annual construction deaths from electrical hazards. Strict de-energizing protocols are essential to prevent such tragedies. At a construction site, a driver lets his truck reverse, its engine rumbling low. He got out of the car and walked to the back to check the rear wheel while the car was still moving. And then, the massive wheel rolls over him, pulling him under with a sickening crunch. His shouts are drowned by the grinding tires. In one reckless moment, a quick check becomes a fatal misstep. On a quiet road in the afternoon, a truck with its lift gate already open begins rolling backward toward a parked car. A worker rushes in to stop it, bracing against the gate, but the truck's weight is unstoppable. The lift gate slams into him, crushing him against the car. In seconds, an instinctive act turns into tragedy. A worker adjusts a yellow bike on a stand, focused. Suddenly, the tire explodes, debris scattering across the shop. The blast shatters the calm. A minor oversight in a cramped space turns deadly, warning that precision and thorough checks are the only line between routine and chaos. In a warehouse, a red forklift strains, lifting a large crate, its motor growling. Mid-turn, it wobbles, loses balance, and topples with a jarring crash. The driver spills out, helpless, as the runaway forklift surges forward, crushing a worker beneath its wheels. Goods scatter in a chaotic sprawl across the floor. Unsafe turning, unstable loads, and lack of proper operator control can turn routine forklift operations into fatal incidents. At a warehouse yard, a worker lifts a container, but without a spotter, alignment falters. The forklift lurches, slamming the container, which buckles, nearly missing the trailer. It is close to dangerous. Skipping spotter guidance risks disaster. Precision and teamwork are vital. A man crouches, inspecting a gas tank, his back turned to a car at the pump. The driver, blind to his presence, shifts into gear. Tires screech as the car lurches forward, slamming into the man with a sickening thud. The engine hums, oblivious, as gasps rise from onlookers. In a fleeting moment of oversight, tragedy strikes. Under harsh sunlight, a worker on a shaky scaffold holds a heavy AC unit. Each step is deliberate but risky. The scaffold tilts, metal groans, and he falls with a cry of pain. Lesson: every step and bolt is the line between safety and disaster at heights. In a cluttered auto shop, a worker operates a spring compressor. Amid scattered tools and chaos, a coil spring snaps, striking his eye. This underscores the need for protective gear and strict safety procedures to prevent accidents. A worker reaches toward an industrial printer close to the spinning spool. Suddenly, the machine lurches, trapping her hand. Her cry of pain fades in the factory's roar. The relentless machine turns into a trap, warning that one moment's oversight can transform safety into catastrophe. Under a tense sky, a worker stands beneath a suspended metal structure held by an orange loader. Chains creak, the structure sways, dust rises as it tilts. Lesson: stay alert to overhead hazards. Safety zones under cranes must be clearly marked. A busy industrial yard hums with activity. A worker carefully guides a heavy diesel generator as the crane lifts it. The cable creaks, the strap sways, its frayed fibers hidden from sight. Then, a sharp snap cuts through the air. The generator plunges, crashing to the ground. One missed inspection turns routine into chaos. Safety checks save lives. Never skip them. In a vast textile factory, a worker operates an industrial printer. As the machine runs relentlessly, his hand gets caught in moving parts. The harsh lesson: never reach into an active machine, power it down, and lock it out first for safety. A yellow excavator smashes a cracked wall, two helmeted workers nearby. The wall crumbles, dust engulfing them in chaos. A solid wall turns into a lethal threat, warning that maintaining safe distance, wearing protective gear, and clear zone marking are prerequisites to avoid accidents. In a factory, a man paces before a lathe, muttering, trying to diagnose its fault. Frustrated, he leans in close, inspecting the spinning mechanism. Suddenly, the lathe catches his clothing, yanking him into its whirling jaws with a horrific screech. His body twists, pulled in mercilessly, as no miracle intervenes. Co-workers nearby freeze, clutching their heads, staring in terror at the mangled scene. In one fleeting moment of curiosity, a routine fix becomes a gruesome tragedy. A worker in a cherry picker fixes a traffic light, focused. A white semi-truck turns, clipping the arm. The bucket lurches, the worker slammed against the edge, dangling, the light sways. A miscalculation becomes a disaster, warning that checking clearance and staying vigilant every second is vital on highways. A customer service employee sits at her workstation, typing, unaware of the chaos above. A white car, brakes failing, plummets from a higher floor, crashing through barriers. With a deafening smash, it slams into her desk, pinning her in a tangle of metal and glass. Bystanders scream as the wreckage settles and medics rush in. A helicopter's roar signals her urgent evacuation. In one shattering instant, a routine turns to tragedy. A man raises the truck bed and slips underneath to inspect and maintain the vehicle. His tools clatter as he works, absorbed in the task. Abruptly, the hydraulic system falters with a sharp hiss, and the massive bed collapses, crushing him beneath its weight. The impact stifles his gasp, tools frozen in place. In one fleeting second of mechanical betrayal, a routine job turns deadly. At 12,000 feet over northwest Wisconsin, two Cessna 182s fly in formation as skydivers prepare to jump. Suddenly, one aircraft slams into the other from behind, erupting in a fireball that tears off its wings and scatters flaming debris. Skydivers hurl themselves into the air amid the chaos. Others are thrown out by the impact. A single miscalculation turns a routine jump into disaster. In a car showroom, a worker operates a lift, hoisting an SUV high, its frame gleaming under bright lights. Suddenly, the lifting frame shudders, and the car tilts precariously, threatening to fall. The worker instinctively reaches up, hands pressing against the vehicle to steady it. With a sickening groan, the lift buckles and the SUV collapses, crushing him beneath its weight. Colleagues sprint over, shouting, scrambling to assess the chaos. Never stand beneath or attempt to stabilize a raised vehicle. Equipment failure can occur without warning. Strict lift operation safety must always be followed. At a bustling dock, a ship brims with coal. A yellow excavator scoops from the hold while a small loader waits below, unaware of danger. Safety isn't a checklist. It's a commitment renewed with every control. A worker digs in a deep trench. The yellow excavator's bucket above strikes the wall. Soil buries him waist deep. His cries vanish in chaos. A sturdy trench becomes a death trap, warning that reinforcing trenches, keeping distance from excavators, and constant monitoring are vital to prevent catastrophe. At a Thai construction site, cranes lift heavy loads high. A worker signals, trusting a frayed, uninspected sling. It snaps, sending tons of steel crashing down, crushing workers below. Fatal oversight in safety checks claims lives. Thailand's construction sector, with 1,200 deaths yearly, struggles with poor equipment maintenance and training. Strict safety protocols are essential to prevent such tragedies. A black car threads through a narrow construction path. Suddenly, the ground quakes. Asphalt splits. A sinkhole swallows the car in a flash, debris scattering. A firm road turns into a deadly snare, warning that meticulous terrain checks are essential to prevent catastrophe from unstable ground in construction zones. On a construction site, massive steel coils litter the ground. A worker nears a coiling machine, trips on them, and loses balance. The machine savagely clamps his hand with steel wire. Tripping hazards in work areas easily spark disasters. OSHA 2025 reports 58% of construction accidents from trips. Clear paths and vigilance are essential to prevent tragedy. A foundry hums under the furnace's glow, heat thick in the air. A worker hauls scrap metal to the roaring fire. Hidden moisture lurks inside the load. As it drops in, steam hisses, then explodes. Metal and vapor blast out in chaos. One skipped inspection under pressure turns routine into danger. Vigilance isn't optional. It saves lives. A male worker stands at the loading dock, jotting notes, unaware of a truck reversing toward him. Its bulk blocks his view, and it slams into him, pinning him against the dock with crushing force. The driver, sensing the impact, jerks the truck forward. The worker collapses to the ground, gasping. Shouts fill the air as co-workers rush in. In one blind moment, a routine shift turns tragic. The foundry blazes with molten iron as cranes swing heavy ladles overhead. A worker signals the operator, routine but tense. The cable strains, worn and unchecked. In a flash, the ladle tips, iron pouring in a fiery torrent. In deadly workplaces, only precision and vigilance stand between safety and disaster. In a bustling warehouse, a female worker arranges goods. A distracted driver backs up unaware, trapping her between the vehicle and boxes. She desperately screams for help, pleading for rescue from the crush. Lack of signaling and barriers turns routine into crisis. Awareness and safety protocols, signals, barriers are essential shields against disaster. An excavator growls near a deep hole, its arm swinging heavy dirt. The ground buckles and the machine loses balance, sliding with a metallic groan. It overturns, crashing into the hole, kicking up a dense cloud of dust. A worker standing nearby is caught in the chaos, swept off his feet by the lurching machine, and tumbles into the pit with it. Shouts erupt as co-workers scramble to help. Unstable ground and unsafe proximity to heavy equipment can lead to catastrophic accidents. On a raised platform in a warehouse, two workers in protective gear labor side by side. The one in yellow boots missteps, losing balance, and plummets several meters to the concrete floor below. A cloud of dust erupts on impact, his body still. His partner lunges, arm outstretched, but grasps only air, too late to save him. A single misstep at height can lead to a deadly fall. Always secure proper fall protection. In a bustling grocery store, shelves loom like cliffs. A female worker uses a shopping cart as a makeshift ladder to stack products high. It creaks, wobbles, and she falls, footing lost. Using improper tools risks disaster. Proper ladders and strict safety protocols are vital to prevent tragedy in every aisle. In a cramped room, a worker adjusts a switch on a worn control panel. A sudden flash of electricity tears through, his hand recoiling too late. The unforgiving current becomes a killer, warning that one careless touch in a high-voltage environment can turn routine into disaster. The factory hums with mechanical rhythm. A worker packs goods beside a robotic arm, its steel grip moving with precision. But no safety sensor check was done. Suddenly, the arm jerks, slamming down and pinning the worker. One skipped check turns automation into danger. A sharp reminder: caution can't be automated. A worker focuses on his task beside the press, the factory filled with the roar of machines. In a split second, his hand brushes the moving part. The machine jerks, pulling him in. A co-worker rushes forward, but it's too late. One careless moment turns routine into chaos. A harsh reminder that safety can't be ignored. At a scrap metal recycling plant, workers perch on a crane, laboring intently. A hydraulic press suddenly seizes, grinding to a halt. The crane driver dismounts and grips the hand control, raising the press's arm with a hiss. He leaps into the press pit to inspect, tools in hand. Abruptly, the press lurches downward with a deafening clang, pinning him in the pit's depths. His muffled cry fades. In one hasty moment, a routine check turns into a crushing tragedy. In an electronics store, a man stands behind the counter, arranging devices. Without warning, a sharp explosion erupts from the equipment, unleashing a blast of thick, acrid smoke. The force hurls him backward, crashing him to the floor as goods scatter in a chaotic spray of metal and plastic. His colleague spins around, rushing to check his condition amid the debris. Improper handling or faulty equipment can turn routine work into an explosive hazard. At a manufacturing plant, a male worker and his manager stand beside a gray pressure tank, discussing its maintenance. The worker, misjudging the system, twists open the pressure valve. A sudden roar erupts as the tank explodes, its metal shell rupturing violently. Shrapnel slams into the manager, hurling him to the ground. The worker stumbles back, stunned, as alarms blare and co-workers rush in. In one reckless moment, a simple error unleashes deadly chaos. A massive lathe looms in the workshop, its steel frame vibrating with restrained power. A worker stands atop the machine, surveying his task. Without warning, the lathe whirs to life, the disc spinning violently beneath him. He loses balance and is thrown hard to the ground. In an instant, calm turns to catastrophe. A stark reminder that even a moment's misstep around live machinery can be dangerous. A worker in neon green stacks pallets, unaware of an approaching forklift. The rushed driver skips the horn signal, unenforced by supervisors. The forklift hits, trapping the worker's foot under a collapsing pallet. Ignoring signaling protocols causes disaster. In a cramped substation, a worker adjusts a worn control panel. A blinding arc flash erupts, sparks flying, smoke choking the air. He's thrown back as flames creep up. High voltage work allows no errors. One careless move sparks disaster. Strict safety protocols are the only shield. In a commercial building, a worker climbs a ladder on a slick floor to fix an overhead fixture. He loses balance, base unchecked, and plummets, crashing into tools box below, lying motionless. Balance loss from poor setup causes disaster. Ladder falls account for nearly 20% of fatal falls in construction and maintenance. Strict stability checks are critical to prevent tragedy. An unattended truck began to roll forward. A worker, trying to be a hero, put himself between the moving vehicle and a wall to try and climb into the cab. The truck's momentum was too great. It pinned him against the barrier until the wall itself collapsed, sending both the worker and the truck into a pool. This chaotic scene started with one simple mistake: failing to set the parking brake and use wheel chocks. Secure your vehicle, and if it moves, get out of the way. In a cement plant, a worker neared the furnace to spark it up, but he improvised with an unsuitable item unfit for flames. The response was explosive. Flames burst forth in a ferocious blast, swallowing the entrance in scorching fury. He vaulted backward in the nick of time, dodging what could have been a lethal blaze. Stick to approved fuels and rigid ignition protocols. Never experiment near open fires. One mismatched substance can transform a furnace into an inferno bomb. Equip yourself with fire-resistant gear and train on emergency shutdowns to turn potential disasters into mere scares. A worker was operating a press when he leaned in to inspect a possible issue. At that moment, the machine began to cycle, catching him inside. Instantly, a loud alarm sounded and a quick-thinking colleague slammed the emergency stop. While the safety system worked, this incident highlights the most important rule. Never put yourself in a position where you need to be saved. Always power down and lock out a machine before you ever lean inside. Employees at a retail store watched from behind a closed shutter gate as civil unrest unfolded outside. Suddenly, a vehicle rammed the gate, breaking it open. A crowd rushed in and the store descended into chaos. It's a frightening reminder that businesses must plan for all types of emergencies. Reinforced doors, employee training on lockdown procedures, and clear communication protocols are what keep people safe when the danger is coming from the outside. A worker snipped ties on truck stack blocks, but as wires slackened, the pile destabilized and avalanched, burying his spot in tumbling chaos that stunned the sight. Prep zones clear and brace cargoes pre-release. Shifts strike swift. Support adequately. Extra braces and alerts tame the tumble, safeguarding unload crews. A crane began lifting several large, heavy steel plates. As the load ascended, the wire rope, unable to handle the strain, suddenly snapped. The multi-ton plates crashed down onto the truck bed with incredible force. A worker standing nearby was completely unharmed for one simple reason. He was in the designated safe zone. This is a perfect demonstration of why safety rules exist. Equipment can fail, but regular inspections and respecting the drop zone are what ensure that a mechanical failure doesn't become a human tragedy. A man crammed several lengthy steel rods vertically into a passenger elevator and hit the button to ascend. Midway up, the rods jammed against the shaft's overhead clearance, halting the car with a violent jerk. The door pinned shut by the wedged metal. He wrestled futilely to dislodge them, turning a routine ride into a confined nightmare. Skip passenger elevators for oversized or elongated loads. Gauge clearances up front and opt for freight lifts or rigging setups. If jammed, halt efforts and summon pros, never force it. Employ spotters for long hauls, secure horizontally where feasible, and enforce signage banning bulky items. Basic verifications and apt gear avert entrapments. A truck loaded with gas cylinders was reversing into a narrow space. To guide it, Several workers stood on top of the cylinders themselves, a dangerously unstable perch. As the truck neared a low wall, one worker couldn't move in time and was caught between the shifting load and the solid obstruction. This is a critical reminder. Cargo is not a passenger seat. Workers must always guide vehicles from a safe position on the ground. Riding on a load, especially a hazardous one, is an unnecessary risk that can quickly lead to a crush injury. On a busy assembly line, a worker stepped inside the safety barrier to get a closer look at a component. But the robotic arm in that cell was still active, following its programmed path. It continued its motion, unaware of the person, and made contact with the worker. It's a powerful lesson in automation safety. A robot's work zone is a no-go area. Physical barriers and sensors are there for a reason, and the only safe way to enter is to perform a full lockout-tagout procedure first. A crane lifted a heavy steel plate using only a magnetic lifter. As it reached its destination, the magnet failed, and the steel plate plummeted to the ground. This is a stark reminder to always verify the rated capacity of your equipment. For critical lifts, you need to be certain your connection is secure, and you must always keep the drop zone completely clear. A group of people were enjoying the cool water at the base of a waterfall. But the peaceful scene was shattered in an instant. Without warning, the slope above them gave way, sending a cascade of rocks and soil crashing down into the water. It's a powerful reminder that natural beauty can hide real dangers. Steep slopes, especially near water, can be unstable. Always be aware of your surroundings and heed any safety warnings. In a factory yard, a crane was lowering a massive steel coil, bringing it just a few feet from the ground. Believing the danger was over, a worker stepped in close to position it. At that exact moment, the rigging failed. The coil slammed down, missing him by inches. This is why the rule is absolute. Never enter the area beneath a suspended load. The danger zone exists until the load is completely and securely on the ground. A bustling industrial yard hums with activity, cranes slicing through the crisp morning air. A male worker, focused and steady, guides a massive diesel generator skyward, its weight straining the crane's lifting strap. Each creak of the cable tightens the suspense, the load swaying slightly. Unseen, the strap's fibers fray, worn, unchecked, a silent failure waiting. 90% of lifting accidents stem from equipment neglect. The worker signals, unaware. Suddenly, a sharp snap pierces the air. The generator plummets, crashing with a thunderous roar, dust billowing. A neglected strap and overlooked inspection turned routine into chaos. In the plant, a glitch unleashed a torrent of molten metal from a pressurized line, rocketing skyward in a blistering arc several yards tall. A worker mere feet away dodged instinctively, evading by inches. The heat singed the air, the threat palpable. Handle molten ops with precision maintenance and vigilance. Don comprehensive PPE, uphold safe standoffs, and monitor for faults. Liquid metal surges swiftly, inflicts profound burns, and offers zero do-overs. Regular drills can hone your reflexes for survival. 2 workers were performing welding repairs on the back of an oil tanker. From the outside, it looked like a standard job. But inside, residual fuel vapors lingered. The intense heat from the welding ignited those vapors, and the tanker erupted in a massive explosion. This is why hot work on fuel containers is one of the most dangerous jobs possible. A tank must be professionally emptied, cleaned, and certified gas-free before any welding begins. Assuming it's safe is a fatal mistake. A maintenance team was inspecting a massive ball mill, with some workers inside the drum and others on top. They believed the machine was safely shut down, but suddenly it began to rotate. With people trapped inside and clinging to the surface, a routine inspection became a life or death situation. This is exactly why lockout tagout is one of the most important safety procedures. A machine must be physically locked out from its power source to guarantee it cannot be started by anyone until the work is done. A worker operating a large press noticed a piece of material was out of place. He leaned into the machine's danger zone to make a quick adjustment with his hand. At that exact moment, the press cycled. This highlights a critical rule. The only time you can enter a machine's operational area is when it is fully powered down and locked out. Guards and sensors are the primary defense, but for any manual adjustment, LOTO is the only guaranteed protection. A worker took an angle grinder to an old oil drum, assuming it was empty. As the tool cut into the metal, sparks flew, just as expected. What wasn't expected was the violent explosion that followed. Residual fuel vapors, invisible and potent, had ignited, turning the empty drum into a bomb. It's a terrifying reminder. Never, ever apply heat or sparks to a container that has held flammable materials. Empty is not the same as clean. It must be professionally purged and certified safe before any hot work begins. In a busy work area, a worker focused on his task walked directly into the path of an approaching forklift. The operator couldn't stop in time and struck the man. It's a classic incident that highlights the need for shared awareness. Operators must control their speed and use their horns, and pedestrians must stay alert and use designated walkways. In a busy facility, safety is everyone's job. High above the ground, two workers stood on a platform suspended by a crane. They tried to manually push a heavy machine from the platform into the building, but the weight shifted. The machine slid off the edge and plunged to the ground below. It's a terrifying lesson in working at height. Never try to manually handle heavy loads on a suspended platform. Such a task requires professional riggers and proper securing equipment, not just brute force. At a construction site, a crane operator tried to unload a massive stone by gently leaning it against the side of a truck, hoping to slide it in. Despite the slow, careful approach, the heavy stone slipped, crashing down before it was in place. It's a clear example of why you can't improvise with heavy loads. Balancing an object like this is unstable and unpredictable. The only safe method is to use proper rigging and position the load directly and securely, relying on procedure, not luck. At a steel loading area, a multi-ton coil began to roll out of place. A nearby worker reacted instantly, trying to stop it with his own body. It was a futile and dangerous act against the incredible momentum of the steel. This is a critical lesson. You can never fight the weight of a rolling coil. The only safe approach is prevention. Coils must be properly chocked and secured at all times, and workers must be trained to get out of the way, not to intervene. Inside a warehouse, a small spark from an electrical fault ignited some material. A worker rushed in with a water hose, but it was already too late. The flames erupted, devouring nearby goods and turning the entire space into an inferno within moments. This just goes to show how an unprepared space can be lost in seconds. Regular electrical checks are non-negotiable, and it's critical to have the correct type of fire extinguisher within reach. The right tool can stop a disaster before it ever begins. Inside a soup factory, a large pressurized tank failed. Without warning, the main door burst open, releasing a wave of scalding hot liquid across the factory floor. A nearby worker was caught in the flow, suffering burns. It's a stark reminder that even food production facilities have serious industrial hazards. All pressurized tanks, valves, and seals must undergo rigorous, regular maintenance to prevent catastrophic failures like this. A crane was lifting a heavy precast concrete section, but as it gained height, the rigging failed, and the massive load came crashing down, landing in the exact spot a worker had been moments before. It's the ultimate proof of the #1 rule of lifting operations. Never, ever stand under a suspended load. Rigging can fail, and the only safe place is a clear distance away. A worker approached a furnace, but instead of using the proper fuel, he tossed in an unapproved material. The reaction was immediate and violent. A fireball erupted from the opening, engulfing the area in flames. He leaped back, barely escaping the blast. Never improvise with industrial furnaces. Using the wrong substance can turn a controlled burn into an uncontrolled explosion. Always follow strict fueling procedures. In a busy workshop, one worker was welding while another casually sat on a nearby gas cylinder. Suddenly, the cylinder's valve failed. Pressurized gas began to escape, turning the heavy steel tank into an uncontrolled rocket that shot across the floor. It's a shocking example of why compressed gas cylinders must be treated with absolute respect. They are not seats. They must be stored upright, secured, and kept far away from any source of heat or sparks. A worker was feeding rope onto a rotating roller. As the machine turned, a loose loop of the rope fell and instantly wrapped around his leg, pulling him tight against the machine. It's a terrifying example of an entanglement hazard. You must always maintain a safe distance from rotating equipment and carefully manage any loose materials, clothing, or ropes that could be drawn in. A forklift was moving with a large load that completely blocked the operator's forward view. At the same time, a pedestrian was walking in its path, hidden in the machine's blind spot. The inevitable happened. The forklift moved forward and struck the man. This highlights the critical danger of blind spots. Operators must use a spotter when their view is obstructed, and pedestrians must be aware that if they can't see the operator's eyes, the operator can't see them. In a risky, improvised attempt to reach a second floor, one forklift lifted another one high into the air. From this unstable perch, the second operator tried to lift a heavy load. The whole setup swayed, and as the weight shifted, the load slid from the forks and crashed to the ground. Forklifts are not cranes, and they are certainly not elevators for other forklifts. Using equipment outside of its engineered purpose is a direct path to catastrophic failure. Always use the right tool for the job. A worker was simply riding his bike through the yard when, without warning, a water pipe on a nearby building burst. A high-pressure blast of water erupted across the road, soaking him and instantly reducing his visibility. While he kept control, it was a sudden and dangerous situation that came from nowhere. This is a perfect example of why preventive maintenance is so crucial. A simple inspection of pipes and valves can catch a weakness before it fails, preventing an unexpected hazard that could easily cause a serious accident. As one worker started a cycle on a molding machine, his colleague approached to perform an inspection. Unaware that the machine was now active, the second worker stepped into the danger zone just as the press began to move. This is why communication and lockout/tagout are so critical. A machine must be fully powered down and locked out before any inspection begins, and all team members must verbally confirm that the area is clear before a cycle is started. Riding on the back of a moving sanitation truck, a worker was shifting bins. As he reached for the next one, he let go of his support bar for just a second. That was all it took. He lost his balance and fell from the moving vehicle. It's a hard lesson in a fundamental safety rule. When working on a moving platform, you must always maintain 3 points of contact. A brief moment of overreaching can lead to a dangerous fall. 2 workers were unloading compressed gas cylinders from a truck. As they moved one of the cylinders, it suddenly burst, releasing its contents in a powerful blast. It's a terrifying reminder of the danger stored inside every pressurized cylinder. They must be handled with extreme care, protected from impact, and inspected for any signs of damage. Workers need to be trained not just in handling, but in how to respond when a cylinder fails. A worker was welding near a wall, sending a shower of sparks into the air. What he didn't know was that flammable material was stored on a level just above him. The sparks rose, found the fuel, and the area erupted in flames that spread with incredible speed. This is why the most important part of welding safety happens before you ever strike an arc. The entire area must be inspected and cleared of all flammable materials. Prevention is the only way to stop a small spark from becoming a disaster. Two workers were operating a large press. One leaned in to make a final adjustment to the material. At the same moment, his partner, not realizing his hands were still in the danger zone, activated the machine. It was a terrifying moment of miscommunication. This is why press operations require absolute coordination. Clear verbal signals must be given before every cycle, and safety interlocks should be in place to prevent activation when any barrier is broken. A worker was operating a crane to hoist a heavy machine part, but the hook wasn't fully secured. Despite the oversight, the lift proceeded. In a heartbeat, the unstable load broke loose, plummeting straight down and pinning him beneath its massive weight. Trapped with just a narrow air pocket sparing him from total crush, he remained conscious yet immobilized, fighting for every breath. Colleagues sprang into action, swiftly reattaching the crane and raising the load enough to extract him. He pulled through, but it was a close call. Always secure hooks, shackles, and perform thorough load checks before lifting heavy machinery. Rushing can lead to catastrophic failure. Double check, triple check everything. Relying on luck with thousands of pounds overhead is a recipe for disaster. Prioritize safety protocols to prevent such heart-stopping moments. A crane operator was moving a heavy steel roll, but he didn't have a clear line of sight on the ground worker guiding him. As the roll swung into place, the worker was caught and pinned in the narrow space between the moving load and a stationary stack. It's a critical lesson in crane safety. The operator and the spotter must be in constant, clear communication. The spotter must always remain in a safe position, outside the load's path, to prevent being caught in a deadly pinch point. In the heart of a bustling grocery store, where shelves tower like urban cliffs, a female worker faces a familiar challenge, stacking products high above. Tension mounts as she approaches a shopping cart, its wheels a precarious stage for her task. The cart, a makeshift ladder, creaks under the weight of necessity, a silent warning ignored. The cart wobbles. The worker's footing falters. The fall is the climax, a moment frozen in time, etching a lesson into the store's walls. In this world of haste and height, every tool matters, every protocol a safeguard. The cautionary tale lingers, a call to rethink safety in every aisle. Near a factory, a motorcyclist traveling at high speed lost control and collided with a tractor. Workers from the factory rushed to the scene, moving the rider to safety and calling for help. Their quick response was critical. The incident itself is a stark reminder that driving under the influence is always a deadly risk, and roads near industrial sites demand extra caution from everyone due to slow-moving, heavy equipment. At a metal wire plant, a worker probed a coil near a formidable press when it abruptly activated, cinching the wires tight and imprisoning him in a vice-like snare. The sudden clampdown left no room for error, demanding swift intervention. Lockout-tagout is non-negotiable for inspections or upkeep. Power down fully, tag hazards, and use energy-isolating devices. Proximity to kinetics invites tragedy. Conduct hazard analyses and wear anti-entrapment gear to thwart life-altering surprises. A heavy machine part, suspended from a crane, suddenly slipped and began to fall. A worker on the ground, standing nearby, reacted with incredible speed, jumping out of the way just as it crashed. His quick reflexes saved him, but it underscores a more important rule. He should never have been in the drop zone to begin with. Distance is your best and only reliable protection from a falling load. A cart, stacked high with fodder, sat precariously balanced. A small child, curious, walked up and grabbed the handle. That tiny pull was all it took. The top-heavy cart tipped violently, pulling the child into the air with it. Luckily, his mother was right there to intervene. It's a critical lesson that work equipment and children must be kept separate. An unstable load doesn't need much force to become a serious hazard. A painter was working high up on an elevated platform. Down below, his partner decided to move the platform just a few feet to the side, but instead of lowering it first, he simply pushed the base. That small push was all it took to upset the balance. The tall, top-heavy structure began to sway and then crashed over completely. It's a critical safety rule. You never, ever move a scaffold while a worker is on it. The only safe way is to bring them down, reposition the platform, and then raise them back up. A shortcut to save a few minutes isn't worth the risk of a serious fall. An overhead crane was moving a large steel frame. A worker stood directly underneath, guiding it into place, a position that left no room for error. Without warning, the lifting wires failed. The heavy frame plummeted straight down, crashing in the exact spot where he was standing. It's the ultimate safety rule for crane operations. Never, ever stand under a suspended load. Equipment can and does fail, and the only thing that will save you is distance. A worker tried to secure a massive steel slab with a simple rope. As he pulled, the immense weight shifted. The slab lost its balance and it came crashing down, pinning him underneath. Co-workers rushed in to free him just in time. This is a critical lesson. Ropes are not rigging. Heavy steel requires certified chains, slings, and proper lifting equipment. One slip can turn a multi-ton load into a deadly trap. In a coal mine, a worker was pushing a heavy trolley along a track toward a lift platform. But the platform wasn't there, only an open shaft. Focused on his task, he didn't see the gap and pushed himself and the trolley right over the edge. It's a terrifying reminder that openings must be guarded. Lift shafts need physical barriers or gates that lock in place whenever the platform is not present. You can never assume the floor is going to be there. A sudden explosion rocked a textile factory, filling the area with smoke and debris. But amidst the chaos, the workers' training kicked in. They immediately alerted others, evacuated to safe zones, and helped clear the area. Their quick, calm response prevented a bad situation from getting worse. It's proof that while accidents can happen, regular emergency drills and clear evacuation plans are what ultimately save lives. Perched atop a transformer-like behemoth, a worker ignited his welding torch. Unbeknownst to him, an internal glitch brewed. The machine erupted violently, its lid blasting open in a surge of sparks and pressure. Welding on live or unisolated gear invites explosive chaos. Always power down, vent stored energies, and verify isolation before igniting. Prep work is non-negotiable. Lockout, tagout protocols, pressure releases, and thorough checks prevent mid-repair detonations. Equip with arc-rated suits and face shields to buffer against the unforeseen, turning hazardous tasks into controlled operations. An operator was using a remote to carefully lower a massive steel roll into place. The operation was smooth until the last moment. Suddenly, the main wire rope supporting the load snapped. The multi-ton roll crashed to the ground, landing just inches from where the operator was standing. It's a powerful reminder that lifting equipment must be inspected for wear and fatigue before every single use. And just as importantly, operators must stay well clear of the drop zone. A worker positioned near a machine with unguarded rotating parts reached for an item nearby when tragedy nearly unfolded. His baggy t-shirt snagged on the whirling shaft, yanking him inward with merciless power. The fabric coiled tighter, hauling his body perilously close to the machinery's deadly grip. Miraculously, the shirt ripped free before he was fully drawn in, leaving him rattled, but unharmed. Avoid loose clothing around operating machinery and ensure all rotating components have proper guards. A single catch can suck you in before you blink. Machines show no mercy. Stay vigilant. Proper attire and barriers can save lives in high-risk zones. Inside a factory, a worker climbed into a large machine to perform maintenance, completely out of sight. At the same time, another worker, unaware of his presence, restarted the equipment. In an instant, the machine came to life, and the first worker's legs were trapped. It took emergency crews hours to carefully free him. This is a terrifying example of why lockout-tagout procedures are non-negotiable. A machine must be de-energized, locked, and tagged before anyone goes near it. It is the only way to prevent a simple repair from turning into a life-altering tragedy. On a busy production floor, a worker focused on his task stepped out to cross a lane. He didn't see the forklift approaching, and the operator didn't see him in time. The machine made contact, knocking the worker down. It's a classic accident that highlights the need for constant awareness from everyone. Operators must use horns at crossings, and pedestrians must stop, look, and make eye contact with the driver before stepping into a vehicle's path. The warehouse yard hums with activity, forklifts weaving through stacks of cargo. A worker maneuvers a forklift, aiming to hoist a container onto a flatbed trailer. The load sways. The machines hum a tense pulse. Focus slips. No spotter checks the alignment. A critical oversight. The forklift lurches forward, its front end slamming into the container. Metal groans. The container buckles, narrowly missing the trailer's edge. The lapse, skipping a spotter's guidance, courts disaster. Precision and teamwork are non-negotiable. In a sprawling industrial yard, a forklift strained to haul an enormous steel pipe that far exceeded its capacity, tipping precariously forward. Instinctively, the driver thrust out his hands in a futile bid to halt the cascade, but the combined mass of machine and metal overwhelmed him, crashing down in a perilous heap. Overloads like this stem from disregarding equipment specs and safety protocols. Always verify weight limits, strap down loads securely with certified restraints, and resist the urge to intervene manually in falls. Opt for emergency stops instead. Keeping clear distances and conducting pre-shift inspections can transform potential tragedies into preventable near misses. A worker rolled up a large metal shutter door. Just as his colleague stepped through the opening, the mechanism failed, and the heavy door came crashing down. What seems like a routine action can become a serious hazard when equipment is worn or faulty. All overhead doors and shutters must be regularly inspected and maintained, and it's a good rule of thumb to never linger in the path of something that could fall. Boarding an elevator with a gas cylinder in tow, a man remained unaware of its insidious leak. The sealed space swiftly saturated, and a rogue spark birthed a confined conflagration, trapping him in rising flames. Inspect cylinders for leaks via soapy tests and transport only in ventilated open areas. Secure upright with caps intact. Overlook nothing. Routine hauls can ignite into infernos. Opt for dedicated carts and fire suppressant elevators to defuse potential blasts. A worker on a factory floor decided to take a shortcut, stepping in front of a machine that was about to eject a heavy stack of wood. As he crossed, the machine fired, pinning him against the boards. In a split second, the operator saw what happened and reversed the mechanism, freeing the man. It was a close call that proves why you never cross in front of an active machine. Designated walkways are there for a reason, and a moment saved is not worth the risk. A heavy load was being lowered by a crane when the lifting chain, strained to its limit, suddenly snapped. The broken end whipped sideways with incredible speed, striking a worker who was standing too close. The sheer force of the recoil threw him to the ground. Chains under load are like loaded weapons. They must be inspected for wear and damage, and everyone must stay clear of the tension zone. A single weak link can have devastating consequences. A worker on a roof was repositioning a metal ladder. As he moved it, it made contact with an overhead power line. The electrical shock caused him to lose his balance and fall from the roof. It's a tragic reminder to always look up and be aware of your surroundings. Electricity is silent and invisible, and keeping a safe distance is the only way to protect yourself. At the end of a shift in a bakery, one worker was carefully cleaning a large dough mixer. At the same time, a colleague, not realizing the cleaning was in progress, switched the machine on. The powerful mixer instantly caught the first worker, leading to a serious incident. It's a critical lesson that lockout, tagout procedures are not just for heavy industry. Any machine with moving parts must be fully powered down and locked out before cleaning or maintenance begins. A massive steel section swayed from a crane, its rope balanced precariously on the very edge of the hook. As the operator guided it, the load suddenly shifted. The rope shot free and tons of steel plunged to the ground, missing a worker by just inches. A team of workers was carefully unloading large, heavy sheets of glass from a truck. It's an operation requiring perfect balance. But during the process, one worker lost his footing and fell, bringing the massive sheet of glass down with him. It shattered on impact, creating an instant hazard of sharp, heavy shards. This shows how quickly handling fragile materials can go wrong. It requires not just strength, but stable footing, clear communication, and proper protective gear. One slip can turn valuable product into a dangerous mess. Perched near a crane-hoisted tilt bucket brimming with crimson molten metal, a worker jabbed it with a lengthy rod to initiate pouring. But his aggressive prod sparked hazardous splatters, flinging fiery droplets aloft. Then, the metal surged out uncontrollably, flooding the ground. Any misstep could have immersed him in agony. Manage molten flows with finesse, not brute force. Use specialized tools, refine methods, and clear zones. Avoid agitation that risks spills. One reckless poke can unleash a fiery cascade and permanent harm. Emphasize training and barriers to contain the chaos. The Mexican factory thrums with heavy machinery, a hydraulic press looming large. A worker, focused on maintenance, crawls beneath its steel jaws. The air grows tense, the hum of the press a constant threat. A critical safety step, locking out the machine, is skipped, ignored under time pressure. Suddenly, the press activates, its force unstoppable, shaking the floor. The lapse, bypassing lockout-tagout protocols, turns routine work deadly. Despite Mexico's labor laws mandating safety, enforcement falters. Vigilance is non-negotiable. A worker climbed on top of a large storage tanker to begin an inspection. From the outside, all seemed calm, but inside, the tank was highly pressurized. Suddenly, the hatch he was near burst open, releasing a violent surge of material. It's a stark reminder that stored pressure is an invisible and powerful hazard. Tanks must be depressurized and verified with gauges before any hatches are opened. One wrong assumption about what's inside can lead to a dangerous, uncontrolled release. A worker was seated at his station, close to a large rotating wheel on a piece of machinery. Suddenly, due to a mechanical failure, the heavy wheel broke free from its axle and crashed to the floor right where he was sitting. It's a stark reminder that equipment can fail without warning. Regular maintenance is critical, and workers should never be positioned in the direct line of fire of heavy rotating parts. A worker was on the ground, focused on his job, when a heavy metal part from an overhead work area slipped and fell, striking him below. It's a direct and painful reminder that gravity is a constant hazard on any work site. All materials and tools used at height must be properly secured or tethered, and the area below should be a designated no-go zone, protected by barriers or netting. What goes up can always come down. The factory floor was calm and routine. Then, a sudden blast from within a machine shattered the piece, and thick smoke began to fill the area. It's a clear example of why regular, proactive maintenance is so important to catch potential failures before they happen. But it also shows the need for a solid emergency plan. Working fire alarms, good ventilation, and clear practiced evacuation routes are what keep people safe when a machine fails. In a noisy cement factory, a worker was focused on his task, unaware that a fully loaded truck had begun reversing toward him. With no spotter and no audible alarm to cut through the industrial noise, the driver never saw him. The truck made contact, and the worker was caught in the path of the released material. This is why in loud environments, visual confirmation is critical. A dedicated spotter is non-negotiable for any reversing vehicle. An overhead crane was lifting a large metal pole, an everyday task on the work site. But as the load reached its peak, the lifting mechanism failed completely. The heavy pole plunged straight down, crashing into the spot where a worker had been standing just a fraction of a second earlier. His last-minute jump saved his life, but it underscores a non-negotiable rule. You must never stand under a suspended load. Exclusion zones are there for a reason, because equipment can and will fail without warning. During a home training session, a lifter wrestled a massive strongman log to his chest. The lift was a struggle, but it seemed under control. Then he attempted the final press overhead. The weight was too much. The log crashed back down, pinning him. It's a powerful reminder that when you push your limits, you must have a safety plan. Heavy lifts like this require spotters or a proper safety rack. Respecting the weight is key to training safely. In a storage room, a single box of batteries began to smoke. Soon, that smoke turned to fire, which quickly spread to neighboring stacks. It's a critical reminder that batteries store a huge amount of energy and can be a serious fire hazard. They must be stored in well-ventilated, fire-resistant areas and inspected regularly for any signs of damage or swelling. Having the right fire suppression equipment and an emergency plan is essential to stop a small problem from becoming a major fire. High up on a factory platform, a worker was completely absorbed by his phone. Distracted, he casually reached out, opened a safety gate, and gave his trolley a nudge forward, all without looking up. But beyond that gate was nothing but empty air. In a split second, both he and the trolley plunged to the floor below. This is a brutal example of how a moment of distraction can be fatal. In a high-risk environment, your full attention is your most important piece of safety equipment. The job site is no place for divided focus. A truck full of wet concrete mix was ready to unload. A worker began opening the side gates by hand. The first one released a controlled flow, but when he opened the next, the material surged out with unexpected force, like a heavy gray wave. He was caught directly in the path of the powerful flow. This shows that even seemingly simple materials like concrete or gravel can be dangerous in bulk. Always stand clear of the discharge area and use controlled, mechanical unloading methods whenever possible. Never underestimate the power of a moving load. As a forklift carried a large, heavy load across the work area, the weight began to shift. The strain was too much, and the entire load tipped forward, tumbling from the forks and crashing down. Heavy loads can become unstable with the slightest bump or turn, especially on uneven ground. A few extra moments to check the load's balance before you start moving is what prevents a dangerous drop. A forklift was struggling with a large, heavy machine part that was dangerously unbalanced. As the operator moved, the entire machine began to tilt under the immense strain. Then, with a sharp crack, one of the forks snapped, sending the multi-ton load crashing to the ground. A nearby worker jumped back just in time. This is what happens when a machine's limits are ignored. Always know your forklift's rated capacity, ensure your load is balanced, and inspect your forks for stress fractures. Pushing equipment too far is a direct path to failure. Deep in the factory, a worker tried roping a colossal steel plate, but it teetered, toppled, and crushed him beneath. His cries pierced the air as teammates surged to haul him out, beating the clock. Ditch ropes for proper rigging on heavy hauls. Without certified gear, instability spells doom. Invest in slings and spreaders and always have backups ready. One wobble can make metal a murderer. A worker climbed on top of a fully loaded truck to pull a tarp over the cargo. While walking across the uneven surface, he lost his footing and fell hard to the ground below. It's a common task that highlights a common danger: working at height without fall protection. Even a fall from the top of a truck can cause serious injury. This is why proper footwear, secure access, and when necessary, harnesses or guardrails are so important. There is no such thing as a minor job when you're working off the ground. Strolling roadside engrossed in his phone, a man collided headlong with a protruding metal shard from a stationary truck, the impact drawing blood and shock. Distractions amplify everyday dangers. Pocket devices near roads or sites, scanning surroundings fully. Alertness is armor. Parked rigs hide hazards, promote hands-free zones, and reflective markings to shield against absent-minded mishaps. A car was being driven onto the back of a transport truck. For a moment, it seemed perfectly positioned, but it wasn't secure. Suddenly, it began to roll backward, picking up speed as it went over the edge. The driver leaped from the car just as it fell, but a worker on the ground was now directly in its path. This is a dramatic reminder that a load isn't safe until it's fully secured. Always use wheel chocks and locks and never stand in the potential roll path. One missed step can send tons of metal out of control. A worker casually slides into view on a trolley, carrying a container of chemicals. But instead of handling it with care, he sets it down and decides to experiment, trying to light the substance. In an instant, it erupts in flames. He even tries to stomp it out with his foot, which only makes it worse. This shocking lack of judgment is a powerful reminder: chemicals are not to be played with. Every container holds a potential violent reaction. Strict adherence to safety protocols isn't just a rule, it's what separates a normal day from a disaster. A crew was using a lifting platform to position a heavy machine. As it rose, the load wasn't balanced properly. It shifted, causing the entire platform to tilt sharply. The machine slid off and smashed onto the floor below. Every piece of lifting equipment has a weight limit and a center of gravity. Failing to balance the load can lead to sudden, total failure. On the factory floor, a group of workers were focused on their task, unaware of the overhead crane moving above them. Suddenly, the crane shifted, and a component came loose, falling directly into their work area. It's a critical reminder to always be aware of your overhead environment. Safety zones under active cranes must be clearly marked and respected by everyone on the ground. It started with just a light haze of smoke near a massive generator. Workers noticed it immediately. The smoke thickened, then began pouring from the machine itself until finally the entire unit erupted in flames. Their quick recognition of that first warning sign allowed them to evacuate safely. It's a critical lesson. Smoke, strange noises, or overheating are never minor issues. They are the early warnings of a catastrophic failure, and they must be acted on immediately. Two workers approached a press machine to investigate a problem. Believing it was inactive, one of them leaned in for a closer look. At that moment, the machine suddenly cycled. The unexpected movement highlights a core industrial safety principle. Off is not the same as safe. Before any inspection or maintenance, the machine must be fully de-energized and locked out. Never assume a machine is safe just because it isn't moving. The commercial building hums with routine, lights flickering in a quiet hallway. A worker climbs an unsecured ladder, tools in hand, tasked with fixing an overhead fixture. The air grows tense. The ladder wobbles, its base unchecked on the slick floor. No one verifies the setup, a critical safety lapse. Suddenly, the ladder shifts, and the worker plummets, tools clattering in a chaotic crash. The failure, skipping ladder stability checks, courts disaster. Workplace safety investigations show that falls from ladders account for nearly 20% of all fatal falls in the construction and maintenance sectors, making them one of the most common and preventable causes of death in elevated work environments. The factory vibrates with the ceaseless hum of machinery, a symphony of steel and sweat. A worker in a white shirt navigates a massive press, hands steady but rushed under the weight of deadlines. Suspense tightens as the machine lurches, snagging fabric and pulling the worker toward its relentless gears. A blue-shirted colleague bolts forward, heart pounding, but the moment slips away. The overlooked latch, a skipped safety check, unraveled order into chaos. Over 15,000 machine-related incidents occur yearly from such preventable oversights. A stark reminder to safety must always come first. A man climbed a ladder while another person held the base to keep it steady, but the ladder was placed on a smooth tiled floor with almost no grip. As the climber's weight shifted, the base slid out instantly, bringing the whole thing down. It shows that even with a spotter, a ladder is only as safe as its footing. Always place ladders on a stable, non-slip surface. On slick floors, use anti-slip mats to ensure it can't move. On the highway, a truck hauling a multi-ton steel coil slammed on its brakes to avoid a swerving car. The immense force of that sudden stop snapped the restraints. The massive coil launched forward, crashing onto the road and careening directly into another vehicle. In that moment, the laws of physics are unforgiving. When hauling heavy, rounded cargo, standard restraints aren't enough. You need specialized chocks and securing systems built to handle that incredible forward momentum. Out on the road, load security is just as important as careful driving. The warehouse thrums with activity, forklifts darting through tight aisles. A worker in a neon green shirt stacks pallets, oblivious to an approaching forklift. Tension thickens. The driver, rushed, skips the mandatory horn signal. No supervisor enforces the rule, a fatal oversight. Suddenly, the forklift surges, striking the worker. His foot traps beneath a collapsing pallet, pinned in a crushing grip. The safety lapse, neglecting clear signaling protocols, ignites disaster. Over 20% of warehouse incidents stem from such failures, per safety data. Strict adherence to procedure is the only shield against tragedy. A mechanic was inflating a large truck tire, a task he'd done 1,000 times, but the immense pressure building inside was too much for the tire's structure. In a violent explosion, the tire blew apart, launching itself high into the air with the force of a bomb. It's a terrifying reminder of the stored energy in heavy vehicle tires. They must always be inflated inside a reinforced safety cage, using a reliable pressure gauge and from a safe distance. You can't stand next to that much potential energy. A worker stood close to a massive steel roll suspended from a crane, trying to guide it into position by hand. He lost his grip, and the heavy load began to swing like a pendulum. Before he could get clear, it struck him, knocking him to the ground. This is why you never use your body to guide a suspended load. Always use taglines from a safe distance and stay out of the swing zone. Even a slow-moving crane load carries devastating force. High above the workshop floor, a heavy component being lifted by a machine suddenly broke free and crashed down. A nearby worker watched it happen, but was completely unharmed. Why? Because he was following the rules and standing well outside the potential drop zone. His safe position wasn't luck, it was procedure. Equipment can fail, but maintaining a safe distance is a rule that will always protect you. A truck was transporting a heavy steel roll. As the vehicle moved, the load shifted, broke its restraints, and rolled forward with incredible force, slamming into the back of the driver's cabin. It's a clear illustration of why proper load securement is non-negotiable. Heavy, rounded objects require specialized chains and chocks to prevent them from becoming battering rams during a sudden stop or shift. At a railway crossing, a truck driver made a fatal miscalculation, attempting to cross the tracks in front of an oncoming train. With no time to stop, the train slammed into the vehicle. It's a brutal reminder of a simple fact. A train always has the right of way because it cannot swerve and cannot stop quickly. Crossing signals must be obeyed, and you must never take a chance at a railway crossing. At a factory intersection, a crane, moving too fast, slammed into the side of an oil tanker. The force of the impact was so great, it tipped the massive tanker onto its side. Fuel began pouring onto the road, and moments later, it ignited into a massive inferno. The driver had to break the windshield to escape. This catastrophic event shows what happens when speed and hazardous materials mix. Heavy equipment operators must slow down and exercise extreme caution at crossings. One reckless moment can endanger an entire facility. Amid factory operations, a crane lowered a bulky load when the strained chain gave way with a vicious crack. The recoiling end lashed out like a whip, striking a nearby worker and flooring him in agony. Distrust aged or unverified chains. Remain outside tension areas at all times. Chains can morph into deadly projectiles upon failure. Mandate inspections, timely replacements, and hazard zoning to safeguard against life-shattering breaks. The crossing gates were down and a train was thundering closer. Suddenly, a man lay down directly on the tracks. Seeing the imminent danger, the gatekeeper rushed out and pulled him off the rails just moments before the train sped past. It was a heroic rescue and a powerful reminder of the absolute danger of railway tracks. Gates and signals are there to save lives, and they must always be obeyed. At an industrial yard spotting a leaking gas tank, a worker scaled to cap it tight, only for built-up pressure to rocket the lid off in an explosive burst, endangering all. Depressurize methodically first, tool up for highs, and PPE fully. Mishandles magnify mayhem. Safe vents and specs prevent pops. Steps like these safeguard sites. A giant tractor tire was left leaning against a wall, a towering, unstable object. A small child, seeing a toy, tried to climb it. His weight was all it took to upset its delicate balance. The tire crashed forward, trapping him underneath. It's a tragic reminder that heavy, unstable objects must never be left unsecured. Tires like this should always be stored flat, because what looks like a hazard to an adult can look like a playground to a child. A worker placed material into a press and started the cycle. Then, trying to save a few seconds, he reached in to add more items while the press was in motion. In that instant, his hand was caught by the closing jaws. This shows why you can never rush around heavy machinery. Safety guards and two-hand controls are there to prevent exactly this kind of incident. You must wait for the cycle to complete and the machine to be still before ever reaching inside. Slicing a tension-laden rail beam, a worker unleashed its pent-up snap, the recoil whipping back to batter him fiercely. Clamp down, pre-cuts and shield with barriers, rebounds lurk in strains. Gear for impacts, prep secures against unpredictables, ensuring cuts stay controlled. At a brewery, a nozzle began to leak. A worker trying to stop the waste made a critical mistake. He placed his hand over the opening. The system's immense pressure easily overpowered him, bursting out with even greater force. It's a simple but vital lesson. You can't fight pressure with your body. The only safe way to handle a leak is to follow procedure and shut down the system at its source. A quick fix can easily become a serious injury. In a glass shop, the owner was bracing a tall stack of heavy glass sheets with his own body. But as he held the immense weight, his stability wavered. The entire bundle shifted and fell, pinning him underneath. It took the combined effort of several people to free him. This is a critical lesson. Never use your body as a safety restraint for heavy materials. Large glass sheets must be secured in proper storage racks. Human strength is no match for that kind of weight. A worker steered a crane-suspended steel coil toward upright stacks when a grounded one wobbled free, slamming down and trapping him in its crush. Teammates mobilized a crane and muscle to hoist it off after agonizing minutes, freeing him rattled but alive. Avoid pinch points between hanging and stored loads. Death traps. Block, crib, and lock standing coils pre-lift, tagline from afar with a certified signaler. Inspect routinely, rig right, and zone exclusions. No skips on protocols that guard lives. A worker was manually emptying a bag of material into a running industrial mixer. As he lifted the bag over the opening, the powerful vortex of the mixing blades caught the material, and the worker himself pulling him dangerously toward the machine. This is exactly why equipment must be shut down and locked out before loading. The pull of a powerful mixer is too strong and too fast to fight. Two workers were preparing a massive stone for cutting. Without warning, the stone, which was only balanced in place, shifted and began to fall. One worker scrambled clear, but the other was directly in its path. It's a tragic lesson. Never rely on gravity and balance to secure a heavy object. It must be mechanically secured with chocks, braces, or clamps. And just as important, always be aware of your position and have a clear escape route plan. A worker was using a handheld grinder, a routine job, but a nearby fan created an airflow that blew the loose straps of his apron directly into the spinning tool. In an instant, he was entangled and pulled dangerously close to the grinder. It's a reminder that all protective gear must be properly fitted and secured. A worker was pulling a heavy steel weight on a hand trolley when one of the wheels jammed, stopping it dead. The momentum caused the heavy load to tip, and the worker instinctively reached out to stop it. It's a natural reaction, but a dangerous one. This shows why loads must be secured to the trolley, and why you should never try to catch a falling object that outweighs you. Let it fall and keep yourself safe. Inside a factory, a worker leaned in to inspect a machine while it was still in full operation. He got too close. In a flash, a moving component struck him, knocking him hard to the ground. He was lucky the incident wasn't worse, but it highlights a golden rule of industrial safety. Never approach or service running equipment. A safe distance must always be maintained. Before any inspection, the machine must be fully powered down and locked out. There are no exceptions. When bags of material caught fire in a storage area, the workers' first instinct was to save the product. They began dragging bags away from the flames. Meanwhile, 2 fire extinguishers on a nearby wall went unused as the fire grew. In an emergency, your first move is the most important one. You must fight the fire, not rescue the material. Safety comes first, and that means using the proper equipment immediately. A worker stood inside the giant bowl of a concrete mixer, clearing out debris. Suddenly, without warning, the feed system activated, dumping tons of heavy aggregate down on top of him. He was buried to his waist in seconds, the crushing weight pinning him as his co-workers desperately tried to dig him out. This is why you never enter a confined space like a mixer without full lockout-tagout procedures. The power must be off, and the feed lines must be secured. One oversight can turn a simple cleaning task into a terrifying trap. A worker was on a truck bed, guiding a heavy bundle of steel plates suspended from a crane. The operation seemed under control until the lifting ropes suddenly snapped. The entire load of steel crashed down with incredible force right where he was positioned. This is why rigging must be inspected before every single lift. Ropes and slings wear out, and a small unseen defect can lead to a total failure under load. Strong equipment and safe positioning are what prevent tragedy. In a hectic kitchen, a stovetop utensil ignited into flames, sparking panic. The chef's instinctive douse with water backfired spectacularly, fueling a grease-fueled inferno that raced across counters and cabinets. Ditch water for oil or gas blazes, kill the heat source, smother with a metal cover, or deploy a Class K extinguisher. Master fire types through drills. A tiny spark can balloon into catastrophe, stock suppression tools, and evacuate promptly to contain the spread. 2 workers were on top of a full gas tanker, attempting a repair. Suddenly, pressurized gas began to jet from the fitting they were working on. They retreated as a visible vapor cloud rapidly spread across the area. Moments later, the gas found an ignition source, and the entire scene erupted in flames. This demonstrates the extreme danger of working on live fuel systems. Such repairs must only be done on empty, purged tanks. At the first sign of a leak, the only correct action is to evacuate immediately. The factory hums with mechanical rhythm, gears grinding, lights flashing. A worker bends over, packing goods beside a robotic arm. Its steel grip moves with precision, programmed, unrelenting. Tension builds as the worker inches closer, unaware of a glitch in the system. No safety sensor check was performed, a critical oversight. Suddenly, the arm jerks, slamming down and pinning the worker. The failure to verify the arm's safety protocols triggers the worst-case scenario. A stark reminder: automation demands unwavering caution. High above the factory floor, a worker was left dangling when the crane system he was on failed. He clung to the rope as his co-workers scrambled to help, but his grip gave out and he fell, crashing onto the back of a truck parked below. This is why all lifting gear requires relentless inspection. But more than that, any worker at height must be protected by a personal fall arrest system like a harness. You can't rely on grip strength when your life is on the line. A radial drill was running through its cycle when a worker approached to inspect an issue. He leaned in, placing his head dangerously close to the moving components. As the drill continued its motion, it caught him, creating an immediate hazard. It's a fundamental rule: never place any part of your body into the operational path of a running machine. Inspections must wait until the equipment is fully powered down and locked out. A worker was demolishing the base of a wall, sitting close to his work, but the structure was weaker than he thought. It gave way suddenly, collapsing exactly where he had been moments before. His split-second reaction was all that saved him. This is why, in demolition, distance is your only true safety measure. You have to plan for the collapse and stay well outside the potential fall zone. In a warehouse, a tall stack of materials began to lean. It tipped over, crashing into the adjacent stack. That one, in turn, knocked over the next, creating a destructive domino effect across the floor. It's a powerful illustration of why proper stacking procedures are so important. Loads must be stable, interlocked, and never stacked above their height limit, because one small instability can lead to a massive and costly collapse. A person was walking down the street passing a construction site. Suddenly, a brick that had been left unsecured high above fell, striking them and knocking them to the ground. It's a tragic reminder that a work site's responsibility for safety extends beyond its own fences. Materials must be secured, debris nets must be used, and covered walkways should protect the public from the unavoidable risk of falling objects. In a teeming factory, a crane maneuvered a colossal load overhead while crews toiled below, blind to the impending peril. The burden clipped a towering machine en route, toppling it in a deafening tumble that sparked pandemonium. Alert workers spotted the tilt and fled, dodging injury by seconds. Core lesson: ban work zones under elevated loads and guarantee ample maneuvering space for cranes. Map out routes in advance, use guides for tight quarters, and enforce hard hats with impact alerts. Proactive clearance and zoning transform crowded floors into safer workspaces. Inside a barber shop, everything was normal. The snip of scissors, the buzz of clippers. At the end of the haircut, the barber reached for a hairdryer. The moment he switched it on, the room exploded in flames. An undetected gas leak had filled the space, and the spark from the hairdryer was all it took to ignite it. It's a shocking reminder that serious safety hazards aren't limited to factories. Gas lines and appliances in any business must be regularly inspected. Workers should be trained to recognize the smell of gas and know that the first step is to evacuate and call for help, not to turn something on. A foundry hums with molten metals glow, the air thick with heat. A worker focused hauls scrap metal to the furnace, its roar drowning out all else. The pile looks routine, but moisture hides in the load, a silent threat. Unchecked, the wet scrap slides into the furnace. Steam hisses, then surges. In seconds, a violent explosion rocks the facility, metal and steam erupting in chaos. The safety lapse? No pre-inspection of materials, a step skipped under pressure. Over 20% of foundry incidents stem from such oversights. The worker steps back, shaken, as the furnace's fury underscores a vital lesson. Vigilance in procedure saves lives. An operator was carefully lifting two heavy boxes, aiming to place them on top of an already high stack. But as the load reached its peak, it became unstable. The boxes tilted and then toppled, falling directly toward workers standing nearby. They scrambled back just as the load hit the ground. This shows the incredible danger of lifting at height. A safe perimeter is not a suggestion, it's a necessity. People must be kept clear of the drop zone, because when a load is that high, there's no time to react. A worker stood precariously close to the edge of a wastewater pool with only a low, inadequate fence for protection. As he balanced, he lost his footing and plunged into the contaminated water. Luckily, he was able to pull himself out unharmed. This incident shows that a weak barrier is almost as bad as no barrier at all. Areas like this require proper, full-height guardrails and clear warning signs. Workplace safety is about engineering the danger out of the environment, not just hoping people will be careful. A team was operating a large molding press, a task requiring perfect rhythm. The first cycle went smoothly, but on the second, one worker was a split second too slow removing his hand from the mold. As his co-workers pulled back, his hand remained, just as the powerful press came down. This is why you can never rely on timing alone. Presses must have physical guards and automatic sensors. With machines this powerful, there is no room for human error. At home, a man tackled cutting a wooden frame with a handheld grinder, skipping safety boots and opting for flimsy gloves. As he bore down on the cut, the whirring disc abruptly fractured. A jagged shard ricocheted downward, slashing deeply into his unprotected foot. The DIY project devolved into pandemonium, a careless lapse morphing into a grave wound needing urgent medical attention. Treat power tools with utmost respect, at work or home. Don full protective gear like steel-toed boots and eye shields. Pre-inspect tools for cracks or wear, and remember, even minor tasks carry big risks. A faulty blade doesn't discriminate. It can slice through flesh as easily as wood. Always err on the side of caution. A worker was operating a small vehicle on a narrow platform, suspended high in the air by crane wires. Without warning, the wires snapped. The entire platform and the vehicle dropped in free fall. It's a stark reminder that you can never rely on a single point of failure when working at height. Lifts like this require backup safety lines, diligent equipment inspection, and personal fall protection for the worker. One weak link can lead to total disaster. On a job site, a towering steel framework sat precariously on a transport vehicle, primed for offloading. Bypassing specialized gear, a worker boldly attempted a hands-on unload. The structure wobbled, then tumbled uncontrollably. His desperate grab did nothing against its crushing force, turning the area into a hazard zone. Manual handling of hefty materials is a recipe for disaster. Human power can't compete with industrial weights. Insist on cranes, forklifts, or hydraulic aids tailored to the task, and establish safety buffers during transfers. Advanced planning, team coordination, and PPE like reinforced gloves ensure risks stay managed, not magnified. A worker was carefully positioning a sheet of material under a robotic press. He assumed it was safe, but the machine suddenly activated, the press arm descending and making contact with him. It's a critical reminder that you can never assume an automated system is inactive. Before a worker ever places their hands in the danger zone, the machine must be fully de-energized and locked out. Safety sensors are the last line of defense, but proper procedure is the first. At a PepsiCo plant in Peru, a massive storage tank suddenly failed. A powerful surge of liquid burst through the facility's walls and flooded a nearby road, pushing cars aside like toys. It was a shocking display of the force contained within industrial storage systems. This is why pressure vessels require relentless inspection and maintenance schedules along with robust containment barriers. When a system this large fails, the consequences can be enormous. Walking along a conveyor line, a worker took a familiar shortcut, stepping from one side to the other, but this time his boot slipped into the narrow gap between two sections. The moving belt immediately trapped his foot. It's a painful reminder that moving machinery has no safe spots to step. Designated walkways exist for a reason. Taking a few extra seconds to go around is always better than a shortcut that ends in injury. A man was walking down the street, his eyes glued to his phone screen. Completely distracted, he was unaware of a sharp piece of metal sticking out from a parked truck. He walked directly into it, suffering an injury that was entirely preventable. It's a powerful lesson in situational awareness. When you're walking, put the phone away. A moment of distraction is all it takes to turn a simple obstacle into a serious hazard. While unloading, a forklift operator noticed a box begin to tilt. He instinctively jumped off the machine to steady it by hand, but he left the forklift running. With no one at the controls, the machine continued to move, becoming an uncontrolled hazard on the loading dock. It's a fundamental rule. Never leave the controls of a forklift while it is running. Always stop, lower the forks, and set the brake before you step away. A heavy truck was traveling at high speed, its load visibly unstable. The combination of speed and poor balance was a recipe for disaster. Suddenly, the entire load bucket tipped, crashing down onto the road. At that exact moment, a scooter rider passed by, escaping the falling debris by mere inches. It was a terrifyingly close call that demonstrates a simple truth. A driver's choices affect everyone. Loads must be secured and speed limits must be obeyed. Public roads are a shared space where one person's recklessness can have deadly consequences for another. Amid factory frenzy, a forklift jammed and veered, trapping a colleague in its unyielding path, the squeeze a byproduct of cramped quarters and obscured views. Forklifts thrive on caution, crawl speeds, clear comms via horns, and pedestrian-free lanes prevent pins. Training sharpens senses. Spotters and barriers curb crushes in handling hubs. A forklift moved in to lift a massive stack of wooden planks. As the forks rose, the sheer forward heavy weight of the load began to pull the entire machine down. The stack tilted dangerously, and the forklift's rear wheels lifted off the ground. It was a close call that shows the danger of an unbalanced, overweight load. Exceeding a forklift's rated capacity doesn't just risk the cargo, it risks flipping the entire machine. Safe lifting always starts with knowing your limits. While a roller machine was running, a worker leaned in to inspect its operation. He got too close, and his hand was instantly caught and pulled in by the moving parts. It's a brutal lesson. You can never safely inspect a machine while it's in motion. The equipment must be completely powered down, locked out, and allowed to come to a full stop before your hands go anywhere near it. In a high-risk attempt to move a massive steel plate, 3 forklifts were used in tandem, balancing the immense weight between them. For a moment, the dangerous maneuver seemed to be working. Then, the forks on the middle forklift buckled under the strain. The sudden loss of support created a chain reaction, tilting the other 2 machines and sending the multi-ton plate crashing to the ground. This is a critical lesson. Forklifts are not designed for team lifts. Pushing equipment beyond its engineered limits is a recipe for catastrophic failure. Always use the right equipment for the size of the load. In a carefully coordinated but risky maneuver, 2 forklifts lifted a single massive steel coil. As they began to lower it, the coil shifted just slightly. That small movement put an immense, sudden strain on the equipment. One of the forks couldn't take the pressure and snapped with a sharp crack. Before any heavy lift, forks and gear must be inspected for wear, because when there is no margin for error, a small unseen weakness can lead to total failure. A forklift, loaded with goods, moved toward a truck to unload. But a worker was standing in the narrow space right beside it. As the forklift advanced to position the load, the worker found himself pinned. With no room to escape between the heavy machine and the solid wall of the trailer. This is a classic crush zone scenario. It highlights why there must be clear, designated safe zones during loading and unloading. Workers should never stand in the direct path of moving equipment, especially when space is tight. One worker was on the ground, guiding a lift stacked high with heavy tires. As the lift rose, the load became unstable, and the entire stack tipped over, falling directly toward him. It's a powerful lesson in positioning. Never stand directly under or next to a raised load. You must always establish a clear safety zone and stay out of it, because even the most routine lift can fail in an instant. A worker moved into a robotic work cell, trusting the safety interlocks to pause the machine. But due to a technical glitch, the system remained active. The powerful robotic arm continued its cycle and pressed against the worker, trapping him. This shows that while safety systems are essential, they must be regularly tested. Before entering any automated zone, a full lockout-tagout procedure is the only way to be absolutely sure the power is off. At home, a man was cutting a piece of wood with a handheld grinder. No safety boots, just thin gloves. As he applied pressure, the spinning disc exploded. A sharp fragment shot downward, slicing deep into his foot. It's a brutal lesson that power tools demand the same respect at home as they do on a job site. Always wear proper protective gear and inspect your tools. A small crack in a blade can turn a simple task into a trip to the emergency room. A worker was on a truck bed, tightening bolts on the side panel. To get a better angle, he put his head through the panel's outer grille. At that moment, the heavy sidewall shifted, dropping just enough to trap his head between the grille and the frame. It's a terrifying example of a pinch point accident. Always ensure that movable parts like sidewalls are fully stabilized and blocked before working on them, and never place any part of your body in a space where it could be trapped. A truck driver realized too late that his vehicle was too tall for the upcoming height restriction bar. With no time to stop, he made a split-second decision and bailed out of the moving cab. Seconds later, the top of the truck slammed into the steel bar, tearing the vehicle apart. His dramatic escape highlights a fundamental rule of driving heavy vehicles: know your height. Always check clearances for your route before you even start the engine. A few minutes of planning can prevent a catastrophic accident. A large, heavy roll sat unsecured on the side of a parked truck. As it began to slip, 2 people on a scooter turned a corner and drove directly into its path. The massive roll toppled off the truck, causing the riders to swerve and fall. It was a close call that shows how industrial hazards can spill into public spaces. Loads must be properly secured at all times, and a clear, safe perimeter must be maintained around any loading operation. Workplace awareness is essential to protecting everyone. After filling up, a driver got back in their car and simply drove away, completely forgetting the fuel nozzle was still in the tank. The hose went taut, and the entire fuel dispenser was ripped from its foundation and sent crashing to the ground. It's a simple but costly mistake, and a reminder to complete the entire fueling process, including securely returning the nozzle before you even think about starting your car. The smallest signs of trouble must be taken seriously. In a busy loading area, a worker was cleaning up a small spill, his attention focused on the ground. At the same time, a loaded truck began reversing into that same space. With no spotter to guide the driver, the worker was directly in the truck's blind spot and was struck. This highlights why work zones must be strictly separated. Pedestrians and ground crews should never be in the same active space as moving heavy vehicles without a dedicated spotter. During excavation work, a worker stood too close to the machine, inside its massive operating range. Without warning, the excavator's heavy bucket swung, striking him. It's a tragic and direct lesson in the importance of safety zones. The swing radius of an excavator is a no-go area for anyone on the ground. Operators must be aware of their surroundings, and workers must be trained to stay clear at all times. Distance is the only guaranteed protection from a multi-ton machine. A worker was feeding logs into a rounding machine, a routine task. But for a brief moment, his attention lapsed, and he placed his hand too close to the powerful intake rollers. In an instant, the machine grabbed his hand and pulled it in. Co-workers hit the emergency stop, but the incident was a brutal reminder of the speed of heavy equipment. A moment's distraction is all it takes. You must maintain constant awareness and never place any part of your body near active machine parts. A worker in a paper factory reached toward a large roller machine to make a small adjustment while it was still running. In a fraction of a second, the powerful rollers grabbed his hand and pulled it into the mechanism. It's a brutal reminder of the speed and power of this kind of equipment. The only safe time to make an adjustment is after the machine has been brought to a complete stop and is properly locked out. The day was calm on a road outside a factory. Suddenly, a massive explosion from within the facility sent a shower of debris raining down, endangering cars and pedestrians. It's a stark reminder that a factory's safety responsibility doesn't end at its property line. Facilities handling volatile materials must have robust containment structures to protect the surrounding community from the consequences of an internal failure. Seeing a piece of cloth stuck in a running machine, a worker decided to try and pull it free without stopping the equipment. In an instant, the machine's power overwhelmed him. The fabric pulled his hand in, entangling him in the rollers. It's a harsh reminder. A quick fix is never worth the risk. Any jam or blockage requires the machine to be fully powered down and locked out before you even think about reaching in. A forklift operator paused at the edge of a road, waiting for a chance to cross. As he edged forward, a motorcycle came down the lane much faster than anticipated. The rider had no time to react and struck the forklift's extended forks, sending him tumbling. It was a brutal reminder of how dangerous the line between a work zone and a public road can be. When operating near traffic, you have to be seen. Use spotters, lower the forks, and make your machine impossible to miss. A crane was being rigged to lift a heavy metal frame, but before the connections were fully secure, the lift began. The frame immediately shifted, lost its balance, and started to tip. A worker instinctively tried to steady the multi-ton load with his hands, a futile and dangerous act that ended with him trapped underneath. This is a brutal reminder. You can never control a heavy load with your body. It must be properly rigged, balanced, and guided from a safe distance. Clear drop zones are non-negotiable. The Turkish oil factory pulses with the low rumble of machinery, vats of sunflower oil gleaming under harsh lights. A worker climbs atop a fuel tanker, cigarette dangling from his lips, tasked with opening the lid for cleaning. The air hangs heavy. Residual vapors linger unseen, a volatile whisper. Tension coils. No one enforces the no smoking zone, a glaring lapse in protocols. A deafening explosion erupts, flames roaring skyward, hurling the worker through the air. Chaos engulfs the site, alarm shrieking. Unyielding adherence to hazard rules is the unbreakable barrier. A crane was lowering a heavy metal component onto the bed of a truck. But as the weight settled too far to the rear, the truck became a giant lever. The front wheels lifted completely off the ground, tilting the entire vehicle into a dangerous, unstable position. This is what happens when weight distribution is ignored. Heavy loads must be placed centrally and evenly to maintain balance. It's a critical step that requires careful planning and clear communication between the crane operator and the ground crew to keep everyone safe. At a bustling construction site, a crane hoisted a massive load skyward. Two daring workers perched precariously on a slim crane beam, trying to counterbalance it with their body weight, but the burden was overwhelming, and the crane's frame buckled under the immense stress. In an instant, the entire structure gave way, plummeting in a terrifying collapse that endangered everyone below. Events like this underscore the vital need for detailed lifting strategies and precise weight assessments. Never resort to makeshift tactics like using human counterweights or risky shortcuts. Adhere strictly to load charts, deploy appropriate stabilizers, and enforce exclusion zones around suspended loads. Meticulous planning and training can avert such site-wide catastrophes. A crane was carefully moving a heavy steel rod across the work site. Everything was going smoothly until, just as it reached the drop-off point, the lifting wire snapped. The massive rod didn't just fall, it swung wildly out of control directly toward a worker on the ground. This is a dramatic example of why equipment inspection is so critical. Wires, slings, and hooks must be checked before every lift, but more importantly, ground workers must always stay out of the potential swing and drop zones. When a lift fails, it happens too fast to react. A worker was seated at a radial drill press focused on his work. He didn't notice that the slowly moving drill head was getting closer. When he stood up, his loose clothing was instantly snagged by the rotating spindle, pulling him violently into the machine. It's a stark reminder to always be aware of the full range of a machine's motion. Maintaining a safe distance and wearing properly fitted clothing are essential defenses against rotating equipment. A mechanic was working underneath the raised bed of a dump truck, relying on the hydraulic system to hold the immense weight above him. But without warning, a hydraulic line failed. The pressure was lost in an instant, and the multi-ton truck bed came crashing down. This is a terrifying lesson in why you can never trust hydraulics alone. Before working under any raised equipment, a physical mechanical safety lock or brace must be in place. It's the only thing that guarantees a sudden failure won't be a fatal one. A crane was lowering a pack of steel sheets when the supporting wire snapped. As the load fell, one of the sheets, released from tension, sprang back like a whip, striking a nearby worker. It's a stark reminder that equipment failure can be unpredictable. Rigging must be inspected for wear before every lift, but just as importantly, workers must maintain a large, safe distance. You have to account for not just the drop, but the chaotic release of energy. Inside a facility, a large industrial boiler was operating normally, gauges steady, everything routine. Then, without warning, it failed catastrophically. The release of pressure was explosive, damaging the surrounding structure. This is why boilers and other pressure vessels are among the most critical pieces of equipment to maintain. Regular inspections and functioning safety valves are not optional. They are the only things preventing a massive, uncontrolled release of energy. A crane positioned a bucket of molten metal ready for a pour. But as the operator began to tilt it, a support on the bucket itself failed. Instead of a controlled stream, the entire load of liquid fire spilled out, splashing across the factory floor. It's a critical reminder that equipment used to handle molten metal must be maintained to the absolute highest standard. One worn pin or cracked weld can lead to a catastrophic failure. In a fabric factory, a worker got too close to a large roller machine and was instantly pulled in by the moving parts. The situation escalated quickly, and with no one else in the immediate area to hit the emergency stop, it became a tragedy. This is why high-risk machinery must have proper guarding, but it also highlights a critical rule. You should never operate this kind of equipment alone. A partner is your most important safety device. A manhole was left open, covered only by a loose piece of cloth. Nearby, a small child, unaware of the danger, stepped onto the flimsy covering and disappeared. In a heartbeat, the father leaped in after his child in a desperate rescue attempt. It took the help of neighbors to pull them both out safely. This is a gut-wrenching lesson that open pits must be secured with solid, load-bearing covers or hard barriers. A simple cloth cover is a deadly trap. During a routine inspection, a worker leaned in close to check on a machine's performance. Without any warning, a pressurized pipe fitting failed, releasing a blast of scalding hot water. The sudden release created an immediate and dangerous situation. This is why thorough, regular maintenance is so critical. Fittings on pressurized or heated systems must be secure, and workers should always wear the proper protective gear before getting close. You have to prepare for a failure before it happens. A loaded truck slowed for a sharp turn, and a scooter with two riders pulled up right behind it. Suddenly, the truck began to roll backward. The scooter riders tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The heavy truck continued its slow, relentless push until it tipped their scooter over. It's a terrifying reminder of why a safe following distance is critical, especially around heavy vehicles. A few extra feet of space is your best defense against the unexpected. A woman was operating a heavy molding press. In a split second, she decided to reach across the machine's danger zone to grab something. At that exact moment, the press cycled, and its powerful plates closed, trapping her hand. It's a brutal reminder that you can never outreact a machine, never reach into an active press. The only safe way to interact with the equipment is to power it down and lock it out first. Machines don't hesitate. A worker finished a cut on a table saw and immediately reached for the leftover piece of wood. But the blade, though powered down, was still spinning. The wood touched the blade and was instantly launched back, striking the worker with violent force. It's a painful reminder that a spinning blade is dangerous until it is completely still. Always wait for it to stop, and use a push stick, not your hands, to clear material away from the danger zone. High up on a tall pole, a worker was performing maintenance while a crane supported the very top section. But the base of the pole the party was standing on was not properly secure. Without warning, the lower structure buckled and collapsed, sending him and the pole crashing to the ground. It's a critical lesson in structural integrity. Before you lift or work on the top of any structure, you must ensure the foundation is absolutely solid. Full fall protection and a stable base are non-negotiable when working at height. Seeing a possible fault in a large machine, a worker stepped inside the housing to get a better look. At that moment, the machine roared to life, trapping him within its moving parts. His co-worker scrambled for the emergency stop, but the incident was a terrifying reminder of a golden rule. You never enter a machine unless it's fully locked and tagged out. Assuming a machine is off is not enough. It must be physically isolated from its power source. A worker prepared to climb down a wooden ladder, but the ladder hadn't been properly secured. The moment he put his weight on it, the base shifted, the ladder tilted, and he fell. It shows how a few seconds of preparation can prevent a serious injury. Ladders must always be placed on firm, level ground and secured at the top before anyone climbs. A stable ladder is the foundation of working safely at height. Outside a large chamber at a cement plant, a faint wisp of smoke was the only warning. Moments later, the chamber erupted, releasing a massive, thick cloud of cement dust that engulfed the area. It's a powerful reminder that dust is not just a nuisance, it's a serious hazard. Dust control and proper ventilation systems are critical in these environments to prevent sudden, dangerous releases. As a conveyor system cycled, a worker placed his hand in the path of a moving metal frame. His hand was caught in the pinch point, trapping him instantly. Quick-thinking co-workers shut the system down, but it highlights a constant danger. Conveyors have countless moving parts and pinch points. All guards must be in place, and everyone must be trained to keep their hands and clothing far from the line of movement. On a chaotic build site, a worker lingered too near a bulldozer mid-load, vanishing into its blind spot. The unwitting scoop buried him in cement, dumping him afar in a harrowing haul. Blind zones breed blunders, deploy spotters, mirrors, and backup cams. Confirm clearances via signals before digs. Distance and dialogue deter drags. Foster visibility protocols to keep sites incident-free. A worker stood before a bucket of glowing, molten metal, trying to start the pour, but instead of using a careful technique, he began striking the side of the container with a long metal rod, sending dangerous splashes of liquid fire into the air with each hit. Then, the flow gave way all at once, pouring uncontrollably onto the floor. Molten metal must be handled with precision, not brute force. One careless move can trigger a violent splash or an unstoppable spill with devastating results. Two workers were performing a routine inspection on a massive, fully inflated truck tire. As they stood nearby examining it, the tire suddenly ruptured with explosive force, striking one of them. It's a terrifying reminder that a pressurized tire is a bomb waiting to go off. All work, including inspections, must be done with the protection of a reinforced safety cage. You must never stand in the direct path of a pressurized tire. The construction site hums with urgency, cranes hoisting heavy material skyward. A worker signals a load, trusting the lifting sling's strength. The air grows heavy, tension creeps in. The sling, worn and uninspected, frays under strain. No one enforced rigorous checks, a fatal lapse. Suddenly, the sling snaps and tons of steel crash down, shaking the earth. Thailand's construction sector, claiming 1,200 lives yearly, often falters on equipment maintenance and training, per recent studies. The lesson burns clear. Unwavering safety protocols are the only defense against such tragedy. Two workers were on the ground guiding a heavy machine as a crane lifted it, but the crane operator pulled the load too quickly, causing it to jerk violently. The sudden movement yanked the workers off their feet, throwing them to the ground. It's a powerful reminder that crane lifts must be slow and steady. Smooth movements are essential for keeping a load stable. Clear communication between the operator and the ground crew ensures that everyone is ready for the lift, preventing sudden, dangerous surprises. Aboard a vessel, a hefty chain under winch tension fractured from overload, whipping wildly and endangering everyone in range. Such snaps occur with fatigued or uninspected gear, turning routine ops into hazards. Routinely examine chains and cables for damage, enforce load limits, and establish safety perimeters. Keep distances from stressed lines and deploy barriers. Proactive inspections can avert these high-velocity threats from claiming lives. On a ship, a massive anchor chain was being tightened by a winch, straining under immense tension. Suddenly, it reached its breaking point. The chain snapped with explosive force, lashing out like a steel whip across the deck. This is the danger of stored energy. Chains and cables under load must be inspected for wear, and workers must always stay out of the path of the tension line. When it breaks, it moves faster than you can. In a parking lot, an unattended car began to roll backward. A man saw it and rushed to stop it with his bare hands, pushing against the trunk. But the car's weight was too much. It continued back until it pinned him against a wall. For a terrifying moment, he was trapped before the car shifted, allowing him to escape. This is a stark reminder that you can't fight a vehicle's momentum. Always use the handbrake and wheel chocks. Mechanical safety measures are reliable. Human intervention is a dangerous gamble. Inside a factory, a tall stack of bottled goods began to teeter, its center of gravity shifting. A nearby worker saw it happening and instinctively lunged forward, trying to stop the fall with his bare hands. But he was no match for the weight. The entire stack came crashing down, scattering across the floor. It's a powerful reminder: never try to catch a falling load. The only safe move is to get out of the way. Proper stacking and securing methods are what prevent the fall in the first place. Workers in a factory were performing a routine task when their entire world was upended by a powerful blast, followed by a rapidly spreading fire. It's a terrifying example of how quickly a normal day can turn into an emergency. This is why proper handling of all materials is so critical. But just as important are the systems in place for when things go wrong: fire suppression, clear evacuation routes, and regular drills. A worker was cutting metal with an angle grinder, sending a shower of hot sparks across the area. Those sparks landed on flammable material stored nearby, and in an instant, a small fire erupted, spreading rapidly through the storage space. It's a powerful reminder that hot work requires a safe environment. All flammable materials must be removed or shielded, and a fire extinguisher must be within arm's reach. A single spark is all it takes to turn a routine job into a blaze. In a vast industrial yard, a bulky machine dangled from crane cables high overhead. Defying basic rules, 2 workers lingered directly underneath. A grave error. Abruptly, the wires frayed and failed, sending the load hurtling earthward. By a hair's breadth, they dodged the impact, hearts pounding from the brush with death. This narrow escape exposes a fundamental peril. Never position yourself beneath hanging loads. Designate and enforce no-go zones under cranes. Scrutinize rigging for wear daily, and respect capacity thresholds. On a highway, a fuel tanker was on fire, forcing traffic to a standstill. From what seemed like a safe distance, drivers watched the flames grow. Then, in a blinding flash, the tanker exploded in a massive fireball, sending a shockwave down the road. If you ever encounter a situation like this, stay much farther back than you think is necessary. Call emergency services, clear the area, and never underestimate how quickly the situation can escalate. An experienced textile worker was adjusting fabric as it moved through a large roller machine, an action she'd performed countless times. But this time, she got too close. The rollers grabbed the fabric and her hand along with it. It's a terrifying lesson that routine is not the same as safe. No matter how familiar the task, you must never touch moving material near an intake roller. The machine must be stopped before any adjustment is made. A worker was operating a large threading machine when he was suddenly pulled toward the powerful, moving rollers. In that critical second, a nearby colleague saw what was happening and slammed the emergency stop button, halting the machine. That quick reaction prevented a terrible injury. It's a powerful example of why you should never work alone around heavy machinery and why emergency stops must always be accessible. One person's awareness can save another's life. A worker was cutting the securing wires from a heavy steel roll. As he snipped the very last one, the stored energy in the tightly bound material was released in an instant. A steel plate sprang forward with incredible force, striking him. It's a powerful reminder that materials under tension are like a loaded spring. You must always maintain a safe distance when cutting restraints and use the proper tools to control that release of energy. What looks stationary can move in a flash. A man was leaning under the open hood of a car, focused on a repair. Suddenly, the vehicle rolled forward, turning a simple task into a dangerous situation. It's a fundamental rule of auto repair. Before you ever start work, you must secure the vehicle. Set the parking brake firmly, put it in gear or park, and place chocks behind the wheels. An unsecured car is a loaded weapon. In a hectic factory, a worker guided a crane-suspended steel coil by hand when control slipped. The ponderous roll pendulum swung, slamming into him with brutal impact. A fleeting error amplified the crane's might into a lethal blow. Employ taglines for guidance and maintain buffer zones from dangling loads. Evade swing paths around hefty movers. With cranes, minor sways deliver major devastation. Train on load dynamics to keep operations smooth and incident-free. In a factory, 2 workers stood over a large tank of water, heated from below by an open flame. The steamy, wet floor was slick. As one worker added materials, he lost his footing and stumbled directly toward the scalding water. His partner reacted instantly, grabbing and pulling him back from the edge. It was a close call that shows why open heat sources require physical barriers. Protective railings and non-slip surfaces are essential to prevent a simple slip from becoming a life-altering burn. After noticing a leak from a gas cylinder in her home, a woman and a helper tried to fix the connection themselves. But as they worked, the leaking gas found an ignition source. The room instantly erupted in a flash fire. They were lucky to escape. This is a critical safety lesson. Never attempt to repair a live gas leak. Your first and only actions should be to shut off the gas supply if you can, open all windows to ventilate, and call a trained professional from a safe location. 2 workers stood on the forks of a forklift, jumping up and down to try and fix a jam. Suddenly, the machine lurched forward at high speed, pinning one of them against a nearby truck. It's a shocking example of what happens when equipment is misused. Forklift forks are for lifting loads, not for riding on or making improvised repairs. Any mechanical issue must be handled by trained maintenance professionals. 2 workers were carrying a heavy steel slab across the workshop floor, a task requiring perfect balance. But all it took was one misstep. One of the workers slipped, and the entire load went with him, crashing to the floor. When you carry heavy loads by hand, your safety depends on every single step. That's why using the right equipment, like a dolly or a crane, is always the safer choice. A forklift moved in to lift a tall, unstable stack of glass soda bottles. As the forks went under and lifted, the balance point shifted. The entire stack tipped forward, crashing to the ground in an explosion of shattering glass and sticky soda. It was a costly mess created in a split second. This is why with fragile, top-heavy loads, stability is everything. You have to move slowly, keep the load level, and make sure it's secure before you lift. A worker was standing on an elevated forklift platform, unloading heavy boxes. As he shifted a box, he lost his footing and slipped, falling to the ground below. It's a stark reminder that any work done at height carries the risk of a serious fall. Always use a proper, secured platform or a safety harness. A stable surface and fall protection are what separate a routine task from a trip to the hospital. Loose straps or clothing can easily be grabbed by rotating machinery, turning your safety gear into the source of the danger. As workers lowered a heavy steel structure, it shifted and struck a nearby gas cylinder. The impact was enough to cause the cylinder to start leaking, creating an immediate hazard. This is why hazardous materials must always be stored in a secure, designated area, well away from active work zones and traffic paths. A clear work area is a safe work area. The construction site buzzes with activity. A concrete pump's boom towering above. A worker guides the arm, focused on the poor, unaware of the high-voltage line looming nearby. Tension mounts. The air hums with unseen danger. No one checks the boom's clearance. A fatal oversight. Suddenly, the boom grazes the power line. The safety lapse, skipping pre-work hazard checks, triggers catastrophe. OSHA reports 78 construction deaths yearly from electrical hazards, ranking third among causes. Rigorous protocols near power lines are non-negotiable. A truck brimmed with towering styrofoam slabs lashed down tight, but a spark from heat, rub, or stray ignited the crown, flames leaping fast. Crews swarmed to slash ties and salvage, but the blaze devoured the pile in a frantic blink, torching the hall to ash. Hall flammables with fireproof wraps, isolated holds, and heat dodges. Prevention trumps panic. For such volatiles, audits and extinguishers ready shield loads from lightning losses. A forklift operator set down a tall stack of wooden boards. As the weight settled, the unsecured stack shifted and slid over, striking another worker. It's a powerful reminder that all stacked materials must be properly secured with banding or restraints before being moved. And just as importantly, a clear safety zone must be maintained around any lift. Never stand where a shifting load can reach you. A concrete mixer was backing up toward the edge of an open basement to make a pour. But the ground along the edge was not properly compacted. As the truck's weight passed over it, the earth gave way. The massive vehicle lost its balance and tipped over, crashing into the basement below. It's a powerful lesson. Before you bring a heavy load near an excavation, you must verify the ground can support it. In a textile factory, a worker was feeding material into an overhead machine. In a flash, a loose piece of fabric was snagged by the rollers, pulling her hand and arm with it. She was lifted completely off her feet, dragged toward the mechanism before she managed to tear free. High-speed machinery is unforgiving. A safe distance is essential because loose material can be caught in an instant, giving you zero time to react. Two workers eased a bulky item off a pickup's tailgate, inching it to the brink for drop. But the shift unbalanced it, sending the mass pitching forward in a thunderous crash that shattered the calm, unscathed yet sobering. Map unload steps ahead. Gear up or rally extra hands for heavies. Command the center of gravity throughout. Forethought and aids ensure handling stays steady, not sudden. A worker was standing beside a concrete wall, unaware that a nearby truck, left unattended, had started to roll backward. In seconds, the heavy vehicle pinned him against the wall. It's a critical reminder that a parked vehicle is only safe if it's properly secured. Always set the parking brake, chock the wheels, and shut off the engine. A truck doesn't need a driver to become a deadly hazard. A worker lingered beside an active mixer, attempting to snatch an object from its side. In that split second, his loose shirt grazed the spinning shaft. The material instantly entangled, twisting relentlessly and dragging him toward the relentless churn. He battled fiercely, yanking back with all his strength as the pull intensified. Time stretched endlessly until the fabric finally shredded, freeing him, shaken but intact. Steer clear of rotating equipment in loose garb or without adequate shielding. What begins as a minor brush can escalate into a life-threatening tug-of-war. Dress appropriately and remain hyper-aware, as mixers won't halt until forced. Implement lockout procedures for added protection. A forklift operator waited for an opening and then began to cross a roadway. But a car approaching down the lane didn't see the machine in time. The driver slammed on the brakes but still collided with the heavy steel forks. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but it shows how easily these accidents can happen. Forklifts are slow, but they create a serious hazard in traffic. That's why warning lights, signs, and even a spotter are essential to alert drivers and prevent a collision. Offloading hefty crates from a forklift perch, a worker teetered and plummeted from the height. The falls jolt, risking fractures and worse in a routine chore gone awry. Harness up with fall arrest systems and stabilized platforms always. No unsecured stands aloft. Even low elevations bite. Safety belts and railings bridge gaps between slips and survival, mandate spotters, and anti-slip mats for elevated evens. In a shocking display of reckless behavior, a group of employees poured a flammable liquid on the factory floor and deliberately set it on fire. The flames erupted near operating machinery, creating an extremely dangerous situation. This goes beyond a safety reminder. It's a case of intentional endangerment. Flammable materials must be stored and handled according to strict protocols, and a safe workplace depends, above all, on responsible behavior. In a busy work area, a forklift with no one at the controls began to roll forward. Before anyone could react, its fork slammed into a parked car. Workers rushed to stop the runaway machine, but it kept pushing, grinding metal against metal. It was a costly mistake that shows why you can never leave industrial vehicles unattended without powering them down and setting the brake. A few seconds of being unsecured is all it takes for a machine to cause thousands in damage. On a busy roadside, a work crew was focused on their task. One worker, without looking, took a single step backward right into the path of a passing pedestrian. The contact pushed the pedestrian off the curb and toward a large, oncoming truck. In a flash, other workers grabbed the person and pulled them back to safety. It was a terrifyingly close call that shows why work zones must be physically separated from the public. Barriers, cones, and clear signage are essential to protect both workers and passers-by. A forklift was setting a heavy load onto a truck when the weight shifted, and it began to tilt. The operator fought to steady it, and another worker instinctively rushed in to help push it back. But human strength was no match for the weight. A fork buckled and the load crashed to the ground, narrowly missing the helper. It's a hard lesson. Never try to physically stop a failing mechanical load. The only safe action is to clear the area and let it fall. Two friends prepared to jump from a ledge into the water. The first one leaped, but before he could clear the area, the second one followed. As the second boy hit the water, his leg struck the first boy hard in the shoulder. It's a simple lesson in patience and awareness. Always wait for the landing zone to be clear. Whether you're at a pool or a lake, giving each person enough space and time is the easiest way to prevent injuries. A worker was testing a large AC unit while it was still loaded on a truck. Suddenly, an internal fault caused it to spark and erupt in flames. Thinking fast, he pulled the plug and then wrestled the heavy, burning machine off the truck to save the vehicle. While his quick action prevented a larger fire, it highlights a critical rule. Never test powered equipment on a flammable surface. And in case of an electrical fire, the proper response is a fire extinguisher, not putting yourself in harm's way. A large steel structure was positioned on a platform ready for a lift, but as the overhead crane took the strain, the load, not properly secured, slid sideways. Workers on the ground were suddenly in the path of the shifting, multi-ton object. It's a powerful reminder that a lift isn't ready until the load is perfectly balanced and secure. And just as importantly, the ground crew must always stay clear of the lift zone. On a construction site, workers were on the second story of a partially built structure, held up by temporary supports. Nearby, a heavy crane was maneuvering materials. Suddenly, the entire structure gave way, collapsing in a heap of rubble. A building under construction is at its most vulnerable. Temporary supports must be properly braced and reinforced, especially when heavy equipment is operating nearby. You have to treat an unfinished structure with extreme caution because it doesn't have the strength to withstand unexpected stress. On a construction site, an excavator began to move, a routine part of the day's work, but a contractor standing nearby was positioned directly in the machine's massive blind spot. As the excavator advanced, it made contact with the man who had no idea it was coming. It's a critical reminder that heavy equipment is surrounded by blind spots. Workers on the ground must be trained to stay out of these no-go zones and always make eye contact with the operator before approaching. Amid a hectic construction zone, workers clustered near a towering wall, oblivious to its eroded base. Massive excavators rumbled nearby, their vibrations gnawing at the weakened supports. Without warning, the wall buckled and crumbled. Two colleagues scrambled clear, but one was ensnared under the avalanche of rubble, fighting for air. Such collapses reveal glaring oversights, mandate daily structural evaluations when excavating close to buildings, halt heavy ops near compromised walls without reinforcements or controlled teardowns. Enhanced site maps, real-time communication via radios, and barrier setups could have sidestepped this avoidable heartbreak. Two workers were sliding a massive metal gate along its track, a routine task. But as it reached the end, the gate's support failed. The entire structure tipped and came crashing down toward them. It's a stark reminder that even everyday fixtures can become hazards without proper maintenance. All large gates and doors must be regularly inspected, and their mechanical stops must be secure to prevent them from ever leaving their tracks. The foundry glows with molten irons searing heat, cranes swinging massive ladles overhead. A worker signals the crane operator, their routine dance with danger. Tension coils. Something feels off. The crane's cable strains, unchecked for wear or perhaps a misstep in communication. Suddenly, the ladle tips, molten iron cascading in a fiery torrent. The safety lapse, neglected crane maintenance, or unclear signals unleashes disaster. Over 4,600 workplace deaths occur yearly in the U.S., with foundries among the deadliest. Precision and vigilance are the only shields against such peril. In a sweltering metalworks, an abrupt machine glitch unleashed a torrent of molten material, slamming into a worker and flooring him in searing agony. Alert teammates leaped in, hauling him clear before the flow engulfed more, their rapid response averting escalation. Enforce rigorous equipment audits and operational guidelines around molten ops. Don heat-resistant suits, face shields, and thermal barriers. Keep standoff distances sacred. A momentary fault can scorch deeply. Schedule predictive maintenance to catch issues early and save skin. In a storage area filled with large rolls of foam, a worker carelessly brought an ignition source too close to the material. In an instant, a small flame erupted into a raging fire that leaped from roll to roll. It's a devastating reminder that with highly flammable materials, there is zero room for error. All ignition sources must be strictly prohibited from storage areas. One careless moment can lead to an unstoppable blaze. In a steel factory, a worker walked up to a massive, upright steel roll to inspect it. It stood perfectly still, seemingly stable, but in an instant, its balance point shifted. The multi-ton roll tipped over, crashing down and pinning the worker's legs beneath its immense weight. Co-workers rushed in to help, preventing a worse outcome. This is a powerful lesson. Never assume a heavy, rounded object is secure. All steel rolls must be chocked or restrained during storage. Gravity is not a safety plan. Using a hand trolley, a worker moved to the edge of a furnace to dump in a load of metal scrap. As he tipped the load, he lost his balance and stumbled, shifting his body dangerously over the pool of molten steel. It was a terrifying near miss that highlights the extreme risks of working near furnaces. Physical guardrails, secure footing, and mechanical dumping systems are essential. You can never rely on balance alone when a single misstep can be fatal. A dump truck, heavy with sand, was reversing into position while a spotter guided it from behind. The driver couldn't see that the ground was too soft to support the weight. Suddenly, the rear wheels sank deep into the dirt, causing the truck to lurch violently. The spotter had to jump out of the way. Before any heavy vehicle moves, the ground it's moving on must be inspected. A solid-looking surface can be a trap. Inside a steel factory, a crane was positioning a large bundle of steel bars. As it was being lowered, a worker stepped between the bundles to untie the securing chains. But as the crane lifted a chain away, it snagged, causing the heavy load to shift violently. In an instant, the worker was caught and squeezed between the two massive bundles. This is a classic pinch point accident, and it's why you must never place yourself between a suspended load and a fixed object. The load must be completely stable and on the ground before anyone approaches. In a plant's electrical maze, a worker grazed a live high-voltage line, convulsing from the jolt's lethal surge in an unguarded instant. Electricity commands respect, isolate sources, glove up with dielectrics, and lock out pre-work. Fatal slips abound. Voltage probes and permits fortify against shocks. During a normal shift, a worker was operating a large machine when it suddenly malfunctioned. In the process of the breakdown, the worker became physically trapped within the machine's structure. A routine task instantly became an emergency. It's a powerful reminder that regular maintenance is essential to prevent unexpected failures, and operators must be trained on emergency stop procedures for when a machine doesn't behave as expected.